Welcome back to familiar faces out there, our Valorant fans here for the SEL. My name is Infernosis. I'm back this week, and we've got Mick, who held down the fort last week with a great sub. But we've returned now with our normal lineup and with a great selection of teams as we're fully into the depths of playoffs. Already one series has finished. That was UAH versus UGA Red, and UGA Red in their third rematch against them actually managed to come away with a win, but now have to look down the barrel of a match with Cumberland Phoenix. So time will tell how that pans out. But we got three more games on the docket. One being played tomorrow and one being played off screen, being recorded right now. But the one for you here is Charlotte Esports against Oklahoma.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when you look at the likes of Charlotte Esports and Oklahoma, the matchup that we're dealing with, this is going to be going in general in terms of the greater scheme of what we got going on. I mean, we're going to see a little bit more bangers probably next week, considering that we did have the top four obviously go through and had themselves a free first round. But this is going to be your kind of rising star playoffs. This is going to be your other guys on the LCQs looking to go ahead and kind of fend for their own, and even more so making a war for themselves to get on the land if they find themselves with enough points by the end of it.
Yeah, Charlotte Esports and Oklahoma, the winner of this goes on to face JMU next week in the semifinals, in the quarterfinals. UTC and George Mason, the winner of that goes on to face Texas State University, who is the 4th seed. And then Cumberland Destiny and Niner Esports, which plays tomorrow, the winner which goes on to face UGA Black. And out of the 4 teams in our quarterfinal stage that obviously got their first round bye, that being Cumberland Phoenix, Texas State, JMU, and UGA Black, the two you're really looking at as contenders to maybe have your best shot at taking down is likely UGA Black, our previous semester's victors, and Texas State University, who had a lot of FFs and didn't have to really contend that much in their winner's circle and had a overall okay tier 1 pool for themselves, but it was nothing too spectacular across the board. And this is still contending that UGA Black is a really good team, and Texas State is also as well, since JMU has struggled against them previously in their series. And maybe JMU gets up here by either of these two teams of Charlotte or Oklahoma. Time will tell, but they got to get through this game first. And speaking of this game, let's jump on over to the map ban selection and see what these teams are cooking up for today's broadcast.
Yeah, I mean, a nice little map pool in front of us, considering what we saw last week or seen Icebox be introduced into the map rotation a little bit more so, but not definitively one of those maps that teams feel comfortable enough to go ahead and put right on the docket off the get-go. But with Ascent now being back in the map pool, we get to see that right back into play. Yippee. And then Lotus is our follow-up. So knowing that Ascent and Lotus are inside the map pool, I'm expecting to see a lot of these kind of double downs, considering that they do feel like they are the two defaults. Ascent was a long-time default. Lotus has recently been kind of the one that teams default to, with the Ascent being out of the pool there for a little while. So knowing that those two are going to be in together, we're going to probably get acclimated to seeing a lot of these two back-to-back.
Yeah, and with grand finals on the horizon as well, when you have full 5 maps, the question will be where you place those. A lot of times we like to think of maps like Ascent as a decider map, and Oklahoma was a roster that had done that pretty consistently in their tenure here for the SEL. Even in the prior season for our splits, they were a team that liked to leave Ascent as the final map for a decider. They go for it first here. Maybe this is a try to chew a little bit of the new. It's not that new. There's only one real change for this map, the wall connecting in towards B on B main. But, it's been out of it enough. Maybe it's just something they want to feel comfortable with because they are the lower seed in this matchup here against Charlotte Esports. But I don't think these two teams are fairly matched. This has been I wouldn't say a bad semester overall for Oklahoma. They made roster changes previously in comparison to what they had in the LAN just about a year ago, 10 months now from this time frame. They are now missing what was their go-to duelist at the time. And I mentioned that when you look at Charlotte, they have 2 very viable duelist options. And one of those is Ruda, who is typically that Raze main and only plays Raze on maps where Raze is super viable. And for today's matchup, Raze isn't really going to be looked at as heavily because Ruda gave a hint to me. I've been let off the Raze leash this week. So Ruda may be appearing in more than just Raze maps and more than just the Raze role in this series. And Oklahoma have to pray that the roster changes, the prep for this, because they didn't get to play that much of the LCQ because of a 4th fit in the first round and then a 2-0 in the second round against them. They have to pray that the changes will be enough and the upgrades, hopefully, in their roster overall will help them elevate to take down Charlotte.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot really here to start going ahead and looking at, but even more so when you talk about the wall changes being really the only few things that was made to Ascent during its time being kind of off on vacation, it's still enough of an actual change to go ahead and warn enough initiators to start coming through that isn't going to be that Sova. I mean, we can already see clearly with that implementation behind it, we do see that the Sova goes off the docket. So who else comes in to fulfill those shoes? Well, it's going to be none other than Tejo, because power creep exists in the game, and it's going to warrant that selection even more times. But even then, still, the KO hasn't been much of a differential, not much of a surprise in general, just knowing that he still does have lots of potency, and knowing how small this map is in consideration to each of the sites, it's going to be an easy knife, easy intel, enough to at least let you know what's going on nearby. But I mean, knowing that even then the selections are coming out, the one big thing that I'm going to be looking at least can be fuzzy on that Vice rather than looking at the pie on the Cypher. The Cypher's relatively default, nothing too crazy there, but we do see some players and they feel a lot more comfortable on that duelist role, at least kind of getting into fights and know that their gunshots should be there. I'm going to be keeping my eye on Fuzzy and hoping that's at least warranted through that selection here today, considering you got your flashes to help yourself out.
Now, keep in mind, still a lot of the upper teams in CVAL, you know, your top 10 overall are looking like they still want to bring the default composition for a map like Ascent. Tejo has not been fully enveloped in their repertoire. Take a look at Cumberland Phoenix, who's now into the grand finals for CVAL South for this split. They rocked it in their previous series we had against JMU, where they walloped them, 12 or 13-2, I think was the final score. Not really giving them any breathing room, and JMU were bringing out the Tejo combo, and they were really just isolated by a single player, and yeah, J-Phone is him, but they were isolated by a single KO, and it really caused a stall, it felt like, overall, for an attacking team to make use of that. But if you can counter that with your own, and C's is a very good player here for the side of Charlotte, you can trust them to kind of orchestrate alongside on their offense with their 0 points. Pot Flash has been a little bit more consistent, it feels like, in the current state of the game, and collegiate players are starting to look towards the KO a little bit more for those. Maybe this will be just enough to really envelop the Tejo into an attacking setup, but first they've got to get through in the defense, and it comes down to a stall game. The longer we have the Tejo in the, I guess, playable stages of the round, I should say, as long as we still have them alive, the more valuable they become. Having the salvos recharge, having the ability to consistently force players into a new lane or try to engage elsewhere. And with the Vice, for the Wombo combo of having Thorns in the ground, Rose, the Arc Rose for flashes, everything in there, it makes it so that Tejo and Vice are arguably one of the best two players, or best two agents you could ever have in a role at any given point. But the pistol round doesn't really have much utility, Dallas, and it looks like it's a primed take for Oklahoma here on A.
Yeah, there's always at least enough, right? I mean, when you look at the Recon Dart coming out from the Sova, actual execution. Instead, we're just seeing more so the Recon Dart come through, and that being the only thing. But still, Sep can manage to find one towards that door. Everybody else want to push on site. The plant is going to be going through, and for the retake to be coming around with the Tejo still being alive, that salvo is going to find plenty of value when it comes around to those first couple hits.
Chance now for Pi to maybe swing in here towards Tree, does get one, steps down, and Fuzzy joins in the afterlife. It's just a single player now left for Oklahoma, and Pi has to retake this. One player back just inside Radiant stack. One tapping of the spike, and they're both at 1 HP, Dallas. A single shot would do it, but a jump peek for Pi almost ruined it. Sees now, wrapping close to Tree, clearing out corner with a pre-fire. Swings the Jin side, it's Pi again, and it's a clutch #1 round for Oklahoma, with Pi facilitating the success off the back of a 3K in the pistol. And that's the round you want to win to get as much of a head start as possible on this offense.
Yeah, and a lot of assistance coming through on those 3 kills. I mean, when you look at the kind of damage done, and especially those 2 players remaining with only 1 hit available, I mean, it is one of those situations where you're saying, the comms are made. Please, man, just don't worry about challenge too much. Just make sure you hit some kind of shot eventually, and even then still the jump shot right there towards that generator. I mean, it's just small little lucky moments like that which can really start to add up and give yourself the course of this game to go into your hands. But, I mean, starting things off relatively strong. We do see the Bulldog coming through. We see Guardian whipped out as well there for a second, but it's a lot of sheriffs coming through from Charlotte because, well, they still feel relatively confident they can win this one out.
The poking game for Oklahoma. They have Guardians. They know they have confidence for at least range. They don't know 100% what Charlotte are going to bring to the table. They're going to likely try to keep anything they have bought somewhat secret for the time being. Pichu does scrape away 1 kill before he instantly refragged. This gains value instantaneously in this round, no matter the results past this point. Spike will start to go down, but here's with a Tejo, like I said, adds for stall and sees! What in the world is the map comprehension from you? A pre-fire through, realizing they'd have to step off default on Jin. They just pre-fire down the angle with a Sheriff, and they find impact. It's now a 4-on-3. Oklahoma have already technically lost this round and where they'd like to be, and it just gets worse. Burying mid now. Pi the only one to find a kill, and there's 3 players peeking that for the denial, and look at Charlotte. Wow. Tying this game up now, 1-1, and breaking the stereotypical mold of Valorant.
And I love seeing this already coming out from Charlotte. I mean, so early on, when you look at what they were doing there, I mean, even then giving themselves a comms. You see C's back towards that door, understand that this is not an angle I can be picking with the Guardian. They're expecting to swing on that left side. Go ahead, Set. Get a step in on the right. Give them a taste of your own medicine. You're the one supposed to be hitting those shots, and that's exactly what he does. Everybody on the team there together, understanding really what this placement's looking like. And that's the second time we've seen a blind kill go through that smoke during that door and just going ahead and set the tone in that. I mean, every single time, it's also been a player planting. So Charlotte understands, hey, where these guys are planning and knowing that they're constantly within their line of fire, maybe not the line of sight, but even better as a follow-up, Oklahoma need to understand that, I mean, something's going to change up here soon, otherwise things are going to look ugly relatively fast in this defense.
Suj will go and gain control and access first to the ult orb, and Sep was a little bit slow to go ahead and try to contest that. That means the macro economy for Oklahoma will have at least a little bit of an edge stepping through this round. You're going to have plenty of free information here when it comes towards B main. There's an ult orb that's pretty hard to deny now, especially so for defenders. Can't spray through that B wall even with an Odin. You can technically still do it into the actual doorway of the arch, the actual gray stone that's surrounding the archway, and a lot of teams will take some options for that. Even on defense, they'll sit closer in towards Market and just pre-fire and spam, but it doesn't seem like Charlotte were going for that. Shots do hit towards Suj, who goes for the tailwind up over the top, now getting into sight. Sip tries to force one player back, hoping that that fragment that was tossed from deep inside Market will facilitate some sort of impact in towards Min, but no, it is instead a Vandal to do so, as Suj wants to get the Bladestorm kill, but just can't do it as Fuzzy walks through and deals with two. It's only one now. Clever. Shot to the head of one. Tries to get two in a row, but a third was nearby just the same. You can't find either of them. Target discipline just not there in Charlotte. Will still make this a 2-1 start, but they did not win that first, and they use that as a capitalization point to say we want to get the third.
And even, I mean, good diverse buy coming out there from Charlotte, not really going ahead and over-investing in that last round, understanding that they were given a blessing in some regard during the round prior. So knowing that Oklahoma didn't make 2-1 of their own right, knowing they're going to be going for that kind of equilibrium, the full buys across the board with a couple compensations here and there. I mean, it's a good start for everyone. And even then better yet, when you look at Suj, who was able to go ahead and manage that Bladestorm during that last round, just didn't find much effort or much result out of it. But I mean, looking and going forward, you do have that Neural Theft, you do have that null command going out for Oklahoma. So I mean, they have the materials and they have all the resources available in hand to kind of build a game plan here to get themselves a post plant that seems relatively successful, but they haven't lost too much in the meantime. But the thing is, it comes down to where do they want to execute that. You have that player, you have that lurker over towards that B site. You're hoping that Neural Theft can go off. You can understand the easiest lane of access to get onto a site. With the player allocation towards A, and you're kind of committing to that without much mid presence, you're really just sending everything down here.
Slow stall out for Oklahoma into a hall and down through main now. They want to make sure nobody's inside wine. They may toss a fragment there. That'd be an easy way to at least get some assurance, or a shock dart could do it as well. Looks like Koa will go ahead and ready themselves the Owl Drone. Now we finally see the utility go out in the no command. Even it's been popped. Oklahoma want to go for a full commit now onto the A side. Hope to deny all the utility that could be on board. Door was not switched, and we require Cloudburst to separate that sight line. As look at Pichu stacked up behind box and rafters, paying the price for their indiscretion. And it's now a first blood on the board for Oklahoma. Two up above in rafters, two coming from Garden. And look at the wraparound from Pi. Oklahoma want to have presence in the backfield. They only have 4 actively controlling on site. No post-plant presence down inside A main. They're really relying on Pi to find an effective kill or two in this space. It's all for timing, and Pi gets their one. Neural Theft to make matters worse. Fuzzy can get an impactful kill for themselves, but immediately afterwards dealt with by a Vandal. And look at the dissolving defense of Charlotte on the retake. Oklahoma leave 3 alive and get through the 4th.
Yeah, I mean, just an outstanding effort there from Oklahoma, and it's better yet, an outstanding execution, actually going ahead, following through, and even then better yet, having Pi get that lap around. One of the higher fraggers on their team so far, managing to go ahead and just really send that message home. But I mean, so early on in the game, going ahead and just throwing that curveball in there puts Charlotte on the edge to understand where exactly players could be coming from and what Oklahoma's real game plan on the greater scheme of things is. But I mean, a big thing to me is at least looking over at Sep specifically with that operator in hand. Didn't play nearly as aggressive with it as what I would like. I mean, even then, still more so, there is a game plan in mind. But now going ahead and going for the opposite end of the spectrum and being aggressive with that Bladestorm off rip. But still, it is an A funnel for the 3rd time in a row. And Oklahoma, while they lost the first one, they understand that the second 2 afterwards should be relatively good.
And look, the pop flashes that I said have been a little bit more effective in the collegiate space right now for KO. Something that you don't really see that often. You too often accidentally flash your own frontline or your own duelist, and it leads into them being in a spot where it should be a 1v1, but both players are as blind as a bat. They play that well on the offense, but Clever's trying to watch the flank that they had just used themselves, and it goes awry. As now Charlotte are positive in this engagement. Seas gets the trade there with Min, but Sif gets a sheriff shot and deals with a wall bang through to Suf, or Sif, sorry. And Seas gets that final, as Charlotte will get a third round win to their name. And A side has been a consistent hit, like you mentioned, for Oklahoma. We're finally seeing Charlotte really capsize a lot of the offensive pressure and then defensive setup for a post plant that they were bringing to the table.
I mean, every single one of those attempts that they had on the retake was something really darn good, and it looked like it had some potential to it. I mean, it just really comes down to those fights and who finds those trades or whether you actually squeak out an initial kill. Keep in mind, during those first two, or at least the ones that weren't successful for Oklahoma, we saw Charlotte able to manage to get themselves a free kill through a smoke. And they didn't really have that leg up initially. They were always playing for that leg behind. And even then still, they had a bit more of an actual check for the rest of the map. Understandably, through garden and back towards that window. But we didn't see that in the round that they ended up kind of faltering on. So, I mean, going forward, that's going to be obviously a bit of a mind game, and even better yet, a mental checklist they're going to have to go through more consistently from this point forward. But of that checklist, we are seeing a bit of a switch up in terms of the actual utility being invested in the meantime, because they understand that this A hit has looked like a pretty darn good home for Oklahoma. They love hitting this site over and over again, so going ahead and popping those dark shrouds, going ahead, giving a bit of a denial over to the side of Oklahoma where they're having to stall at least for a second. That's going to be more than enough to at least give it an idea of, okay, maybe we could flex somewhere else. Maybe we could have a singular player here. And, well, Sep knows that there is one there. Knowing that could have been that wrapping player that we saw 2 rounds prior, but you shut it down at least for a moment more.
Now, this match is not just a match to guarantee who moves on here in playoffs, but also a match that could determine which team makes it into land. Both of these two teams have 16 points throughout the first semester in our fall split, and now need more to guarantee access in spring. They've gotten a little bit, but it's got to get a whole lot more dicey as the frags go down on site. Oklahoma, a lot slower of a presence here towards A, but still they want it as Clever goes for a wide swing, catching Fuzzy off guard for the spray transfer, and now it's just Sep, their only teammate, needing to be stabilized up on rafters, and eventually they will fall. And Sep has to claim a 1v3 back from the clutches of defeat, and it's a triple stack, no, sorry, a double stack, layering height to keep the sight lines cleaner, and Oklahoma tie this series now 3-3.
Well, I mean, at least a double stack with a pinch coming through. I mean, you might as well have 3 players that you're looking down the line side of, and that's just not going to happen there for a singular player to have to go up against. I mean, this is one of the things that we've seen Oklahoma execute time and time again throughout the years. And while this team, obviously, as you mentioned in terms of pointage, I mean, this is the same team that we saw Charlotte go ahead and be competing for that, 3rd, 4th place last year during our LAN. So, I mean, these are 2 teams well worthy of getting to those later stages of the LAN if they end up making it there. It's just a shame that we're having to see this kind of matchup occur right now, but it's still blessed to at least see it occur nonetheless. So knowing that even in Oklahoma right now, not really investing too much in terms of the ultimates, they're still keeping themselves relevant. Economy's still looking good. Pressure around the map looking relatively even. They understand that they need to be flexing their muscles a little bit and going ahead and getting those legs warmed up. And we see them right there. The Jet not using the legs to press W, better yet. More so just looking to dash in with Clever there on the backup, able to go ahead and get one back towards that fountain. And understandably, everybody else after the back of a kill like that, just go ahead, hold down middle, make the rotation, and see whether or not you can get that spike down eventually with Pi already being present.
Seas just wants to engage. Heard lots of footsteps, assuming they wouldn't be looking back through the dark cover and bottom mid, and pays the price in accordance. Fuzzy now trying to take an engagement with 3 players with direct line of sight. It's Charlotte going for these hero plays and commitments, and it's turning into a drought for success. As now a full rotate will need to be made away from the A site. Peachy wanted to get a little bit of information here, but gets tapped away instead by the Aldrin, or maybe Spike him at that point. And it's just waiting now for your Jet to move on over and maybe get a chance for a step up or 2. Just get some economy equalization by dropping these Oklahoma players down. But Sep is absolutely eviscerated by the Vandal of Men. Wow, it's a complete lockdown here against Peachy with a step up here towards Walkway, and it's Men from back inside Boathouse to secure it. Oklahoma now at 4.
I mean, game awareness there for everybody present inside their round. I mean, whether it be start to finish, but even still, I mean, Oklahoma looking really good when they understand where they're going to be, as I said earlier, flexing their muscles towards. I mean, they're not really going ahead and exercising too much pressure. They're not overstepping their own boundaries. They're not still trying to force out market once they have that kind of back fountain control. They're looking to just go ahead and see what's really working out for them. Even after the back of the one kill, they were already making that rotation. Second one, they say that's now full commitment. We just can go ahead and break our knives out and then just go ahead and sprint that as fast as possible. They understand, not even better yet, just kind of the feel and the tone of what they're doing, but they understand the urgency based on whatever's handed to them in the time being, and they have done a great job of just understanding what's going on in the map and then reacting as so. So already going ahead, looking for a bit more mid presence again, seeing if anybody flexes their way out there, makes a bit of an extension. But that's one thing that's been relatively lackluster in this match so far, where the mid presence hasn't really been there until finally Oklahoma understand that this is a big hot spot and where we should be finding our first bloods.
Chance now. Switch gets a little bit too out in the open, and there's a heavy Charlotte emphasis for bottom mid control. And it's led to Oklahoma now finding 0 kills. 2 players, yes, close to B site, but Spike completely left at bottom mid and just outside of market by Pizza. And no kills up until just now with Min, as PG goes for the flank through defender spawn. Just a total dissolvent for Oklahoma's offense. They kind of read that, Charlotte kind of read that Oklahoma really like to put a little bit of pressure here towards bottom mid. A lot of the times we used to talk about old agent selections and viabilities and metas for the map of Ascent. One of the ones we would talk about a lot, Dallas, was the Sky using the Tasmanian Tiger, the Hound to walk down mid, clear out market, get a little bit of information. As limited as that scope of his ability is, it can at least give you some assurances. They don't really have a whole lot of ways to do that actively, and the recon votes are very easily cleared, and it only gives you information that maybe one is there, if maybe two, because they've been stacking it. But Charlotte can always throw a wrench in things like that last round and have 3 or 4 really close by to shut down the Oklahoma front.
Well, even then, that was the case around prior, but even then, we actually saw, so able to go ahead and kind of check that market and make a bit of a 360, understand that there is a player there. There was no checking there whatsoever during that last round. That was Siege just managing a free kill because we never saw the Jet turn around and make that full clearance. And I mean, that's going to be a bit of a learning lesson for you if that ends up being, I mean, considering this map always usually is close teams, that 13-11 kind of lineup. So, I mean, that could have been drastic, and that could also cost you the entire series. As it stands right now, they're looking to go ahead and bite back as they find themselves a presence on site. They're getting that spike down as soon as they can, but they're also just waiting for the players to actually get there, because as we do see a bit of a setup, no players on that flank, nobody going back towards that tripwire, but instead of Armageddon going ahead and getting ready to be procced and rolling out towards Boathouse.
What a way to shut down Boathouse presence. It forces Min out into space, and they do find one. The rest of Charlotte are just tearing apart the Oklahoma front. 2 players looking to step upstairs. The Garden absolutely ripping every viable weapon from their hands, and it's done and dusted for Charlotte. An expensive round, to be fair, but one you would like to guarantee, because Oklahoma had all 5 players still standing. They did not lose a single one on the approach to site, and Charlotte were all but willing to let them have access to it. That is a very good round for them, and the Armageddon into the back of Boathouse should now clean off towards Oklahoma. B-side is good when we know that Teo does not have that ultimate online.
Or even then, I mean, based off the back of that, even then the Steel Guard, I mean, as a follow-up, I mean, you're looking at Fuzzy, as I mentioned earlier, who was able to manage some kills early on, but even better yet now as a follow-up, when you have that Steel Guard, you talk about how small these sites are. I mean, we already talked about the 0 point and what that does, and the null command, just the AoE presence of that in general. The Steel Garden does essentially the same thing, just a much more clear presence and removing your primary weapon from your disposal. So making that a very easy retake if, I mean, it comes down to a last-ditch effort where things are getting really, really rough between you and the other side. But speaking of rough, it's already a rough beginning here for Charlotte as they found themselves a player down, overextending towards the A arch, giving something up over to Oklahoma, because while that last round didn't go well for them, having a gun in hand of your duelist, so long as they don't overextend and hand that back over for free, that could be a bit of a domino effect or a pass on for everybody else around, like, kind of get this thing rolling.
Timing will be everything for Oklahoma. They know they've gotten a little bit of information, poking for a first kill. And Charlotte will play a lot more passive on this A site in accordance, especially considering the player that they lose. They don't have the as adept ability to enclose into space safely with a cloud burst for a retake. They can just stall out more with utility and try to get the Teo salvos to be 100% online, as well as having the 0 point to maybe shut down the opposing side's Jet, that being on Oklahoma. The eco is working out. Pi is now able to collect and trade out for a better weapon, and with a smoke placed up in Raptors, Oklahoma now free line of sight to step in and get control of A. There's that 0 point. Able to get a little bit of information. The players up in rafters and stall even longer. The salvos will keep the plant from going down for the time being, but with garden and technically tree being entirely there for Oklahoma, it's not the best of spots for Charlotte to try to step back into space. As low HP is fuzzy, but not nearly low enough. The Odin sprays through to try to get some sort of kill, but Suge just goes crazy in this round. A 3K to their name, the last one to Sif up in rafters, and this is a back and forth game, which we kind of expected knowing how good these two teams were on paper and how they turned out going through this series.
Yeah, we didn't even get a POV over on that A site. We were just looking at Garden the entire time because, I mean, Suze was just running through, making quick work of everybody present, and even kind of showing up for that retake, so it wasn't really much to look at the end of the day besides that guy just being a walking clip house. But as it stands right now, Charlotte, understandably so, popping the timeout during the first half. I mean, this is a bit questionable, but not questionable enough to be warranted, considering that, I mean, you have kind of had yourself a bit of a leg up. You know that with these kind of later rounds now, where there's not going to be too much time to actually rejuvenate and get those ultimates once more, you really got to make the difference with this null command in hand. I mean, in the Armageddon as well, I mean, possibly able to come up once more, so long as you find yourself a string of kills in the next two. But, I mean, it is just going to be a stressful scenario knowing that you need to be taking your breathers, taking your time, and understanding really the greater scheme of what Oklahoma is putting onto the field here. Because with the Hunter's Fury in hand, they've been loving that A site, and it's kind of one of those questions of saying possibly we could allocate a player to go right through that middle, or maybe find a really slow lap around through the entire map, because that's probably going to be their plan when they get down to it.
I loved the way that Oklahoma have tried to play into this first attacking half, right? I think they've got a little versatility when it comes down towards mid-market. When they initially met a lot of pressure, they were very quick to fall back. That's when we saw them getting round wind there. Then when they overcommitted the next round, they said, okay, maybe bottom mid isn't really want to go to, because Charlotte started to key into what we're doing. Let's put some more towards B main, make noise in towards tree, make noise in A main, try to get them to take the bait, and then let's get in towards B. And yeah, we'll lose the round. They've got a lot of ultimates that are really great counters to us at this point, but you're getting success nonetheless, and you're able to then use those as relay points for later rounds, because you're also destroying their eco in the process. And this has been a really back and forth, and not just in terms of round wins, but also in the way that these thrifties and ecos have had to play out. Oklahoma obviously winning out that last one changes the dichotomy of the overall scheme a whole lot. Should try to make it so that they can buy the remainder, even if they lose this, buy the remainder of this first half, and could hopefully stabilize them to get up to 7-5 at halftime, which is the way they'd like to be on offense, to try to play into a very good defense on Ascent. But worst case scenario, 5 is already a fairly good foot to stand on for the map of Ascent, especially when Charlotte is known for how good their defense can be with the amount of utility they have on the borders. There goes the offense rushing in, and it's shut down, or at least Clever is shut down off an opposing direction by a sheriff shot to connect, and Min is just making a whole lot of noise off towards B. They're going to go for the wraparound we saw Pi do just earlier, Dallas.
Yeah, I mean, already, we did see it, as you said, but I mean, even then still, they kind of goes ahead and use the horses and push on the side a little bit faster than you would expect otherwise. So Min is still here on site, still able to kind of get some effect here, and just gets the job done. I mean, just well executed there by Oklahoma, holding down that site. No real hesitation there in terms of just making sure to get those kills. But even then, off the back of it, Charlotte just wasn't really quite sure when you saw that singular kill go over towards B. I mean, that goes ahead and just clusters the comms realistically. I mean, you go ahead and let a player know, hey, he's over towards B. What are we going to do about this? How are we going to counteract it? And there's just not really much you can do. It's saying cue the horses into side a little bit faster, because we don't want to deal with the guy behind. We'd rather go ahead and get that post plant, that defuse ticked off, and put this guy on the timer. But with the guns that were in hand, there's just not much you really could have done in that situation. But regardless, I mean, the point discrepancy isn't going to be that large by the end of this. You're looking at the 6-5 so far. We're either going to go into 6-6, 7-5. Nobody's really guaranteed themselves anything, knowing that, I mean, this second half should be just as gorgeous to watch in terms of keeping things close.
Interesting choice to have the operator on offense. And they've been playing a very interesting default the entire time. They've been going for 4-0-1, leaving 4 heavily typically off towards A main when they want to hit this early, and then they'll slowly extend 1 back, or even 2 back, off in towards walkway, and they'll have that third straggler, which a lot of the time has been a different player every time for Oklahoma. Poke off towards B, and in this stance, give him the operator and let the boomstick sing. And it does exactly that. Gets themselves a frag now on B, and Suge with the Blade Storm can now start to claim space. Is there in a bad spot, but somehow Sif just doesn't hit what they need to. Pot flash ready for Seeds. Waiting for the audio cue, gets out in front of it, but self-flashed themselves a little bit, but the pinch was perfect by Pichu in the same fell swoop from inside, just on the edge of defender's spawn. It's 2 versus 2. Clever rips apart Fuzzy, and Pi knocks Pichu down a peg. It's 7-5 for Oklahoma, and they get out of the first half going positive, though not by much. It's still anybody's game.
I mean, it most definitely is. I mean, even you can just tell by those first 3 rounds, I mean, we don't really know what's going to happen here. It's not going to be that 2-1 default that we expect out of every single game whenever the best of the best are going up against each other. That, I mean, we do see Charlotte having kind of tricks up their sleeves to manage to get the job done. But things are going to be a little bit more difficult for them on this attacking side, considering that they're not looking for information anymore. They're not going to be kind of just hoping players are there and watching these corners. They're going to have to be the initiators. They're going to have to be the ones to play the game. And speaking of initiators, you're not having a Sova here. You don't have any types of scans. You're relying on a drone every single round and a 0 point here and there to get the job done. Anything outside of that, you're just hoping to throw out salvos to force players off angle.
Oh, Oklahoma start from the right, but they got the double swing. They wait for the pot flash from Charlotte's own KO to get out and use it. Knowing just how difficult it is to truly use it, especially with how far the flash has to get through that Omen dark cover laid up on the inside wall. Oklahoma have keyed into the exact strategy from Charlotte and their willingness to use that previously on defense to use it against themselves on offense. There's only a couple angles that KO's flash can really work with the team as a pot flash. One of them is straight into the arches on A. If you let your jet go really far forward and contend, yeah, they'll have sightlines for just about a second, maybe a half a second if they're really fast to get in front of that flash. But afterwards, and a lot of the point of contact for that fight, will have the opposite player be flash first and foremost. It's a dangerous pot flashing player for the play for initiation. And it does not work if you've got to get it through a smoke, out of the smoke, into the long haul. Instead, you're likely just going to flash the secondary player that's peeking far and around the corner.
Sure, Pi's still in play, though. So, I mean, obviously, we're seeing a repeat of what happened in the last round, but not nearly the same in terms of the actual results, because we haven't seen any players getting just knocked down like we did prior. Looking to kind of push in, well, understandably so, against the Spectre. That Sheriff more than likely is going to win that fight just because you can go ahead and throw that thing out. And who else is now on site to help out in the cause? None other than Suge, who, I mean, looking at that scoreboard, has been absolutely frying during the course of this game. I mean, while you do have the other Oklahoma players kind of going ahead and holding in the reins and staying relevant there, you have C's also on the other end of Charlotte trying to get the same thing done, but everybody else on the team hasn't been able to double down and kind of meet that momentum that's being there. With 8-11 on Set, 8-12 on Pichu, you look at the other end of the spectrum and you see 8-11-10 on Clever, 10-7 on Pi. Everybody has had their own role and play in terms of how they kind of want to be flexing around this map and kind of stretching the resources of Charlotte as thin as they can. They've been doing a great job of that so far, which is really going to be driven in on this half when you see that. I mean, if the kills are there, the momentum should follow.
Look what Mid has done. Take a shrouded step through the dark cover alongside a flash, or at that point, it was the arc flash, I believe, coming out, if I'm correct. No, that's on the Vice to the other side. Charlotte itself flashed that own corner, and it did get them flashed, but it didn't seem to matter. But it led Min up to a good frag, and now they've gotten themselves 2 in total for this round as they peeked into Octopus and cleared out the B lobby. And Clever's up close, ready to swing away from that flash, but both Qua and Clever get caught by it, and Sif is able to clean out both with the assistance from C's. This will be an A site plant now for Charlotte. Oklahoma, they have 2. They're both going to be coming from rafters, and the Outlaw could hit one body shot and let your player of Pi get the rest of the hits needed, or could go awry just as quickly. The Spectre can be a solid weapon, but maybe not at this range, because it is a far A main hold coming out from Charlotte's offense, and C's does not even let them peek that angle. They rush up, take up to the pixel hold, and deal with both players in rafters as easy as can be to get Charlotte their first to the second half.
Yeah, I mean, just seeing how this is going, I mean, able to go ahead and manage one there, but in the big scheme of things, I mean, Oklahoma's closing in that double-digit checkpoint chokehold kind of scenario. So we're looking to see whether they can actually go ahead and continue and draw that line, just overcome it, because you're hoping that, obviously, you're looking to win a round like this when you see that Charlotte doesn't have themselves nearly as much of a buy in the next round. You can kind of snuff them out and lock out that potential round to put themselves in an eco to kind of guarantee it for yourself. Like, that's a lot of variables, and that's a lot of things to ask for. But Oklahoma, from what we've seen so far, being the only team to manage to get themselves a flawless thus far, they could be the ones to do it. But Will we see that same level of synergy? Will we see that clean, cohesive kills that we want out of them? And honestly, it depends on who's leading the charge here, because they don't set the tempo. They don't get to decide when the gunfights come in their direction. They're holding these angles and they're allocating a lot of it towards that middle of the map right there in Garden, knowing that these A pushes just look inevitable for both ends of the engine.
And a lot of the emphasis for Oklahoma on their offense came off of their jet, right, for their duelist entry. They have fulfilled their role to a near perfect T, it feels like, even though the scoreline was very close at the end of the first half, just 2 rounds between them, and it was back and forth. It still felt like the jet made a big enough difference, and obviously the scoreboard would agree with that fact. And now you have to kind of fill big shoes if you're on Charlotte here for Suge. You need to make sure, sorry, for Sif, you have to be... No, Sif's not only playing the Teo, for Suge. You have to fulfill very big shoes here, because the jet is a hard... Sep, why? I'm blanking on this. Sep has to fill very big shoes, and it's very hard to do that if your offense isn't willing to send utility until they know everything for sure. That's the problem with the Teo in this stance. Once they know where players are, salvo, in for vines, toss those in the ground, clear those players to keep them in space, then you send your jet into for control. But closing the gap everywhere else, like trying to cross courtyard, obviously that fails like in this round, and it creates even bigger problems that they need to evolve past into. And now with a ton of information given to the players in back of Boathouse, yes, Quad will lose their life. Pi can still sit back here and wait for the team to try to stagger in, but they'll get rushed upon by one. Will they even find a kill? They do! And you didn't trust Fuzzy nearly enough, and it may not matter. It's only Suge remaining, and they got themselves one. Dashing just out of the 0 point. And now staggering here towards bottom of staircase. Needs to check either corner, and Sif is waiting for an audio cue to know everything for sure as it's a stairwells play for the Salvos. Close inside tuck. Spike is tapped, and there's the wall bang for one. Suge will go in, likely hold this to half at the very least. No, doesn't, and it won't matter. Sif gets a third in this round of the Tejo. Strikes true on the offense, something that is required with this Asian selection.
I mean, just great executions there. I mean, if there's anybody who could have pulled off a clutch like that, I'm expecting it to be none other than Suge, based off just the resume at hand of this player in this game so far. But I mean, still, knowing that Sif is up against that, knowing that's a player that hasn't really been faltering too much and just hasn't had too many circumstances to step it up and have to get in those clutch scenarios, it's that kind of sleeper stimulant, that agent who's capable of doing it, but yet still hasn't really had much limelight to get it done. So it's just situations like this where you're just playing a game of survival. You're not too far back. You're not down in the depths of hell, but you are very much in a manageable point to really get this thing rolling. When we see it out of Charlotte, it's a team that's very resilient, likes keeping things relevant, and we have seen that so far, making sure the score was really close in that first half. But while things move into the second, and while this second half hasn't looked great thus far, it has looked like it has had a bunch of potential, a lot of possibilities, a lot of things for them that they can just kind of clean up, small tweaks here and there, or more so just understand that there's a bigger stressor behind these 1v1s than you would typically think.
Pi and Clever, the Wombo combo, where we saw Charlotte do this in the first half, trying to repeat now for Oklahoma. Snap will step into the dark cover, and it's an easy frag off to Clever, but Pi does get one. But unfortunately, the player to grab is one who's in an L command and can just be restabilized thereafter. Everything up to this point past that has been flawless, though. All 5 up for Charlotte, stepping towards side. Quad knocks the head off Sep. Dastardly shot with the Sheriff as they walk down through walkway. But they're now quickly being usurped upon in this direction towards back of Boathouse. And they can't find a single one or a point of impact thereafter. Suge gets a good shot of their own and now has to make the decision. How do I want to step in towards site? What direction of availability is there for me? And with the Blade Storm online and only a single blade to their name, I don't even know if I would be willing to risk using that blade in an attempt. And could rather just go for 2 outlaw shots and guarantee the frag. They do know one here. Bottom of staircase. Maybe play for an exit or... No, waste both shots and now have to spend 10 seconds waiting for a reload.
Yeah, I mean, that's all you're really doing there is just playing for the exits. You have 10 health in a dream, 1 singular blade. I mean, everything on the bottom of your screen, whether it be ammo count, whether it be health, no matter what it is glowing red. And that's a clear indicator of danger, danger. This is a terrible idea. Don't really go for it. Just look for anything you can to manage that last round. But even then, I mean, Suge could possibly do it with everything at their disposal, but beyond that, not really much to work with. So seeing Oklahoma going ahead, opting in for this timeout, seeing that, I mean, these last couple rounds have been hemorrhaging them a little bit. It's not the end of the world by any means for them. It's just that things have slowed down. Charlotte has started to make these adjustments, and even more so with the composition at hand, we're not seeing the default setup that we get out of Oklahoma in terms of composition. They're having to go ahead and factor in a couple more variables than what we're used to because keep in mind, Ascent just got introduced back into the map pool. So What are we doing about this Vice now coming into play? What are we doing about this Tejo that has an Armageddon to work with? What kind of angles can we not hold? And what are the kind of regular default places that we throwing that thing out to either funnel us into them for these initial fights, or better yet, just forcing us off for that retake if we end up getting to a point where they don't have to really fight us for the plan? There's a lot of questions that they're having to dig through right now. And I mean, they're all very, very relatively easy to answer so long as they have that resume, so long as they have that context, have that history. But they don't. They're just looking to understand that while things are getting in nitty gritty, while things are getting so close between these two, what can they do? What kind of front can they take? And honestly, the A push may be a really good idea, but I mean, just getting aggressive in general and maybe getting that initiator killed off rip could be a good idea, knowing if it's not even a variable in the equation, you don't have to stress it so much.
17 rounds played, and it's 15 deaths for Fuzzy. They have not been able to keep themselves active in these rounds. And the Sentinel is a big priority for Charlotte's offense here, needing to work in tandem with the Teo of Sif. Could be one of the reasons why we saw him a little bit staggering on that first half. A little bit better here for the second. Suge.
Oh.
What is happening
well,
there,
open.
Suge? Was it an attempted jump peek and you just forgot to actually turn the mouse far enough to get around the wall of Octopus? I don't know. But it's two early ones for Charlotte, and now a From the Shadows will be used to get into the back of Boathouse. This was kind of the ploy of having that Omen ult online. You could be anywhere and then quickly step back to a site if necessary, and B is a pretty free one to leave up now that you don't have to worry about constantly shooting with an Omen through that wall.
That leaves questioning with the immediate execution not really being there. You would obviously, any team in the world would go ahead and assume that, well, we're going to push B off the back of that. You saw the rotation towards middle, but you don't even see a double down through the middle of the map. You see it lapping all the way through, but even with only 3 players alive, it's still a question whether or not you can actually hold out for something like this. Going ahead and get those razor vines towards that door. See if you can force this player off. And understandably, when everybody rotates to go ahead and capitalize off the 2 players dead on the B, well, where do you go? Well, possibly over to A, because we just broke everybody's ankles over on Oklahoma. And it's a free plant going down. A Vice Seal Guard to work with now as well. On top of that Armageddon from the Shadows we mentioned earlier. But I don't think they're really going to have to invest any of it unless we just see Oklahoma running through guys. And with those 2 kills, that's not going to happen.
Wow, the combo from Pichu with the paranoia through the garden wall and trying to, from the side of Oklahoma for Min with the garden wall and the player up in rafters. She thought something was about to be cooked up, but C's laid just below the rafter side, did not jump up into Pixel and played that very wisely and trusted that Pichu would swing out through that smoke thereafter. And the timing is just barely in the edge for Charlotte. And it now ties up this game. It's been 4 in a row on their offense, and the defense of Oklahoma has not really found the perfect solution just yet. This round will be another eco, semi-thrifty. They have a little bit of credits they could try to spend out on a couple of these players, that being your primary fragger here of Suge and your secondary helpful initiator that can maybe create some space for you in later stages. But Suge does get themselves a proper rifle frag to alleviate some pressure, but they fall immediately afterwards. And that weapon is going to want to be held in the right hands if you're Oklahoma, and you're going to pray you can get over to it as you lap back over to an opposing site for a hopeful post-plant retake, as Charlotte have taken a whole lot of damage at this point. Dallas, 1 dead, felled up in the top, another one just low, and then a third, that being Sif, very low on HP, could make this very manageable Oklahoma despite the ego they came into this with.
Yeah, just looking really for anything here. I mean, a nice little sneak to the middle of the map, understandably so. I mean, they could find maybe the sneak onto the Sova, get themselves an extra one, but I mean, it really just comes down to whether they give anything away, because every single bit of noise could be just life or death for these Charlotte players, considering that, meanwhile, you're looking to manage the numbers and keep it relatively even. Sif is 1 shot, and that's an Armageddon, probably going to be utilized in that post plant just to go ahead and make sure that I'm not putting my life on the line for anything. I'd rather just kind of be there as more of a deterrent, and even then just more of a denial of that timer that's just ever so present here inside these matches. But when you opt to go for that A heaven, this is really stressful because there is no way to really drop down without making that noise. There's going to be something there. Pie's going to get the information. Someone's going to go ahead and pass that off. But with Pie having nothing but a judge in hand, well, you can't really go for that retake on your own. So here it is. Sif going ahead, setting up. Fuzzy looking to push out and close that door. Pie with nothing but the judge back towards that spawn, but has a bit of assistance there with Clever in hand as well. So they're just going to sit on this crate the entire time, manage to get one in the process, and with some nice exchanges going through, C's is just having to clutch this thing up, and I don't know if it'll happen. Already with Pie, with that judge in hand, with the damage done, it's an easy cleanup because, well, you just got to get some pellets off, and it's going to be more than enough.
Whew. Oklahoma, after disparaging 4 rounds in a row, so many of those being thrifties or just valiant efforts across the board, take a very dangerous attempt by going for a heavy buy on their top 3 players, and they use that as a staging point for the remainder of the round. And thankfully, you had Min and Suj find impact with those initial chances, the initial peaks, and you secure yourself a 10th round. But we call this the checkpoint or chokehold for a reason. Dallas and Oklahoma were kept back at 9 for a while. Can they survive the remaining few? They cannot let up another spree of 4 in a row, because if there's 4 to be got, Charlotte will finish this game all in a row to end this 13-10. That is not where Oklahoma want to be. And Ascent is known to be a very close match for scorelines. It's where good teams go to die, and anyone can pull off an upset against anyone. But Charlotte and Oklahoma are very evenly matched to this point. The difference is so slim. And speaking of slim, this angle here from Suj and Pichu, you don't want to peek an operator, but you just don't know it's there. And that octopus hold is not going to be an easy one to try to get an engagement off against. And they'll fall back, not trusting anything they've had in the layer of smoke for the team trying to step through Garden.
Yeah, just looking for anything here, but already going to hang things underway. The null command back towards that guard, looking to turn these players off and kind of just make them back up. And I mean, that's exactly what it's done. You don't have any utility to kind of be pushing through. And even if you did, you can't use it. But still, Suj back towards that B main, able to go ahead and manage to get one. And, well, good looks. Just hold down with that operator. Who's going to back up? Who's going to go next? Well, go ahead and form a line. Let's see who's going to be next. And it looks like to be Fuzzy or C's, but it doesn't matter if the shot doesn't land. That's Suj knocked out. That's your top frag on the side of Oklahoma, not able to hold things down as the floodgates open towards B. Cloudburst a little bit to the left, but that's intentional because you're winning those fights, and Charlotte want this side.
Now left with only 3. Hunters for you will roll out, and Qual gets suppressed from a 0 point, just tossed way over that. No, it's a no command from this range from C's. And now it's a straight rush into sight. Min somehow gets away with the initial peek, and it's frags even for Oklahoma. Qual rips apart Fuzzy, and Sep's now known exactly where they are, but the intel can be given from C's down on the floor. Sep has the blades out, all 5 at the ready. Spike has been tapped here to be tested, and in the air! Humble him, why don't you, Qua? Knock him down a peg, and it's 3 for them in this round to give Oklahoma an 11th. What a round coming out here for your Sova.
I've seen this guy shoot clay birds, but I've never actually seen it in person. Just beautiful execution, understandably flying around, but can still nail that first shot. I mean, I saw the updraft, I saw the blade storm, I saw the vision, but we all saw what happened. Just an unfortunate fall there. A great clutch out from Koa, knowing that, I mean, that's been the bottom player of Oklahoma. We haven't seen much stances just yet, but to go ahead and cross that checkpoint, get past that threshold, those are moments that's really going to set the tone here to just really drive in this first map.
Goodness gracious. Still 3 ultimates on the docket for Charlotte. They can still piece together success here for this round, but they know that an operator is still on the board for Oklahoma. They would have collected that at the end of the last round. And you don't want to have to deal with this weapon at any point. So you're going to try to play as slow as you possibly can in any direct lines of sight you would engage into. You try to avoid it. One way to do that here is with the Sentry drone tossed in here by your Teo. And another one would be just to avoid it. As Suj getting rushed for the second. Sep, great read. Knowing they need to close that gap as soon as possible. Usurping primary control now of Market. Is Quad stuck in the back now. Forced to rush away. And the Garden comes out. They bought the Sheriff just for this moment. And it's good for one at least. The trade there for value. As Oklahoma are now left with Clever and Pi. Needing to re-engage now close to sight. Clever will drop in towards Cubby. Spike officially having gone down, and both look like they're primed to walk on walkway. They may want to have a tertiary angle at which to work with. One close on boxes. Pop flash up over the top. Trying to swing for the box player. Gets them. Now playing in for a neural cage just to make sure nothing can be seen. And they'll use the 0 point for no util. But the Armageddon still comes out, and Clever stuck with it. And it's so well done by Charlotte. And their offense can do it on defense as well. It's a B-site take. And it gives them their double-digit stat line.
I mean, able to just go ahead and keep it close once again. I mean, we see Charlotte able to keep this tempo, able to kind of manage to keep up with Oklahoma, and still the kill discrepancy wasn't the largest in the world earlier on, but everybody else in that second, third, fourth line has managed to create the equilibrium, make sure to start pulling their own weight, and then everybody's equally pitching in, and that's what we're looking for out of Charlotte so far, and they've done that in this latter end of the second half. So, I mean, good looks for them thus far, looking to go ahead and really drive that thing home, but still on the attacking side, it really comes down to what's going to be next. The buys are still across the board. Everything's equal in terms of that regard. There has to be a wild card to play with, and The middle of the map isn't really a wild card, but it's definitely a good starting point. The one thing you could go ahead and kind of keep your eyes on would be that B push. Oklahoma has loved pushing that out. And even then, as we mentioned earlier, where you saw those 2 kills managed by Fuzzy, you're saying, what are these guys doing? Well, they want to get the angle. They want to get the aggression. I think so as soon as they hear all these feet step in and knowing they only got classics in hand, this is one of those guns where, see, it's still very much doable.
Oh, free gun, by the way. But eventually, it will be dealt with, and it will be set to deal with the competition. Except now wants to get past this cage and wants to switch the door. Has a teammate to rely on for a moment there. And what in the absolute garbage is happening right now? Why is Pichu taking a shrouded step? Or was that the From the Shadows? I truly don't even know. What was that attempt?
It is From the Shadows. That's even worse.
That's even
you have
worse.
Like so many seconds.
Sees inside Cubby, one of the only 2 remaining now for Charlotte, Sif being the other, and Sif gets eviscerated by a couple of blades from Suge, and it doesn't seem like Seas will be too far away. They'll push over to the rifle instead and let the whole team start to extend. One walkway, one now walking up the stairs towards Market, and the other one inside B main. It's as easy as can be in a 3v1 for Oklahoma, and they kept enough eco alive that I don't think there will be any problem for this next round, and they are knocking at the door of a win on map 1 Ascent, on their map pick as well, which would be very valuable. Their Ascent can be anyone's. It's been out for at least enough time that, and with enough agent changes, like with the Tejo, that I would argue Oklahoma still feels like they have to win this map.
I mean, consider what we've seen so far. I mean, Oklahoma, after the back of that round, I don't think they should have a problem really closing this thing out. If you can win a round with that kind of resources at hand and then look to see go next, I mean, there's got to be something here for them. But, I mean, it comes down to they can actually have the execution and do find that closure, because while they didn't really have much of a struggle when it came around to round number 10, round number 9, they did have a bit of a chokehold on, and they kind of cashed it in early, which, I mean, every single day of the week I'd be taking as a team. But it's not really much of a choice on your end. So seeing that Oklahoma does at least have somewhat of a curveball, they have something to play with, being that Hunter's Fury, it's only on the defensive side. So do you have anybody towards the A lane? Do you have the Sova allocated there? No. So that's not a possibility. But still, they don't have any players pushed up. You don't have that same level of aggression as you do back towards B during that last round. But that was just more of a desperation play to see if you can manage something, and both players did. So good looks from them, and you really can't blame Charlotte to say, let's try that one more time, but just make sure that nobody's holding close with the classic to get a free kill.
Oklahoma want to try to play for a staggered hold inside Puppy, connecting through the tree. But Charlotte have circumvented a lot of what could be there. They'll send a lot of Vice utility in towards defender spawn, and they'll quickly get onto the B side to play for this. As for ultimates, Oklahoma do have the Hunter's Fury that could stall at a plant, and that will be popped here. And they'll send that close to the back of Boathouse. Just buy time for the remainder of the team to get over there. You're going to wait for the Omen to step in late. And PG was kind of watching for the rotate. Will, in fact, take the option to swing out into bottom mid, but has been flashed and still wins the fight against Min in the 1v2, but can't take down Pi. It's an even 3-on-3. Koa ripping through Sep once, one more. Diz allowed it, and it's a 1v1. Fuzzy, 3 to their name, has to get a 4th. Chased from the opposing end. Koa clutched up previously, needs to do more. Doesn't hit the shot! That's Fuzzy, no! 13 for Oklahoma. Koa clutching up 2 in the final 3 needed on the B site alone to secure Oklahoma the first map on Ascent. What a series we now have on our hands here, Dallas.
I mean, when you get around to talking about a Sova in that B site, even though the wall has changed, it doesn't change the muscle memory of knowing you've been playing that site for the past 3 years and should understandably face every single kind of gunfight possible in a couple times. So, I mean, nothing really new there from Goa. Nice to go and have those clutches there towards the end, but I mean, that wasn't really the end-all, be-all for that team. It sure is heck helped, but everything prior was just more so Suge during those initial kind of mid-stages of the rounds, leading into that second half, towards the latter end of that first, just going ahead and really carrying those kills, as I mentioned, having a massive discrepancy until finally C's was able to kind of go ahead and step up to the plate, and the rest of Charlotte kind of waking up and saying, look, we got to play here too. It was just enough to go ahead and set that edge, whether it be 1 or 2 rounds, to really just drive it home and say, look, this should be Oklahoma's map. It is their selection, so it should be their dub. And at this stage in playoffs, I don't expect us to be seeing much of those kind of big swapperoos in terms of the map wins and selections.
Now, we do have another match coming up that is playing right now, and we will be doing a broadcast this weekend on it. That will likely be Saturday for me and or Sunday. Dallas, you're available, at any point. It doesn't matter.
Probably
it's going to be us kind of like VOD reviewing it, right? Because they're live streaming it on their own channel for GMU. So the scoreline will already be known. We'll break down the problems. Charlotte and and Niner Esports main team know how that is. I will absolutely tear into you for your very incorrect Cypher tripwire placement. So be ready for that one if you are UTC or GMU in that stance for that matchup. But I do believe they're close to finishing out that game. I think we may have clips in the break, or the live stream for them is actually still going on while we take this break. So stay tuned for that. I'll be right back for our second map. We'll see you then. Oklahoma pull off their map win 13-10, but it's Ascent, and that can be truly anybody's game. The tail of the tape, though, is move over to Lotus. This map is very similar, Dallas, to what you see or had seen when Ascent was gone for the short period of time that Riot decided to strip us of their oh-so-loved baby child of Ascent. And it has been kind of in the heyday for a while, and it is a very solid map, and we have always characterized it as being the new Ascent in the way that you play and the style, but the agents have changed a whole lot. Maybe don't feel like that in some capacity, but they may feel a little bit more like Ascent with it being back, and the Teo and Vi's actually being viable on that map, just not panning out the whole time if you're Charlotte.
Yeah, and I mean, Lotus is also a lot more fun to watch. You got 3 sites to work with instead of 2. There's a lot more penetrable walls, right? And just kind of that DB fault that we've already seen come through. But, I mean, regardless, I mean, the map just in general is so much more of a joy to watch. And, I mean, I'm happy to see that Charlotte at least chose it, but with both of them being in the rotation, as I mentioned prior at the beginning of the broadcast, it feels like it's going to be a bit of a default kind of assumed it's going to be in every single rotation in some regard or another. But I mean, at least as you mentioned, the character selection on this map is going to be a bit of a wild card because there's a lot more things that are viable here. When you look at the Vise and the Tejo that was in play during that last map on Ascent, that's a bit of a sketchy call, a bit new when it comes around to the metas and whatnot. But even then still, on this map, it's relatively just standard. I mean, the Vise can be played over towards that seaside on an island. You can see that with the Viper. You can see that with the KJ. You have so many different possibilities where, I mean, this is the map where it genuinely feels like a Sentinel has a setup every single time. You can see that difference being made. You talk about the Rays, though. You talk about the Leash. Well, Rays can and will be coming into play here because Rita wasn't playing during that map number 1, but will be here for map number 2 and is seemingly locking it in with the rest of the team being ready to roll. I think I'm keeping my eyes on while I talk about the Viper. We're seeing 2 close. So we're apparently playing this map like it's bind.
Apparently.
I mean,
one of the things I love as well for this map is that Fade was so popular for so long because the viability for it off towards C above Waterfall for the toss-up for the Haunt, and the Prowler being able to quickly wrap around through the corners through C. Teo doesn't even have to peek those directions to clear those. Doesn't have to worry about the close angle because they can send out their initial stun around that corner anyways and bounce it off the floor, and then you can have your salvos go around the bend and deal with anyone that's in Waterfall and give you safety anyways. There's so many chances, and for a map like this, where you're looking at the value for a raise, guess who steps up to the chopping block if you're on the side of Charlotte? Who else but Ruda? They'll take away initial play from Suge. No, sorry, Suge on the other side. Take initial play for Sep. They do not want to have their typical, I would say, typically Jet, as well as what I know them most for is ISO on maps like Haven. They don't want to have that played here. Give the reins back to Ruda. They said they weren't let off the leash this week. Last second decision by them. It is what it is. But you know that Ruda, and this was the player I was highlighting in terms of duelist differences, and so Oklahoma have had to make a lot of changes for compositions for their roster throughout these semesters and splits. Not having their old typical duelist. You wanted to see how good Suge was going to be in comparison, and Suge outperformed by a pretty large capacity the duelist for the opposing side of Charlotte. Now Ruda has to step up and see if they can do a whole lot better, as it'll be a matchup of a Raze on Raze. That's round 1. Where does an offense have to go? Likely towards will be something similar along the lines of C. Don't want to get too close to the fight early on in towards A. Try to rely on the limited utility you may have to quickly get into that site and then hold really close around these corners and find value picks with Classics would be probably the best choice for this, which is why you don't really see more than a single Ghost and actually a Frenzy being bought for Oklahoma's offense here.
I mean, yeah, in this map, you don't really see too much of an actual, I mean, with the Sheriffs, I mean, obviously always a good option. The Frenzy also having some nice, diverse kind of ranges that you can be working with, but everything else is just kind of really all over the place. But speaking of Suge and speaking of the Frenzy, it's already going ahead and finding a bit of a tear here to kick things off with the first kill in hand. But I mean, everything else following up, it's a nice quick B plant, one that you never really expect. I mean, it's a nice play from Oklahoma here and a wild card for a start.
Well, we'll stand close to the corner. One player coming in from Waterfall side on the back B site. Maybe free for the taking if they can quickly get over there. The Vice Wall buys so much time, and Ruda doesn't have any utility to work with, bar the Roomba. And the chances to send that out successfully will be slim. Suge will have to reload that Frenzy. Wants to swing with Clever with them, catching them off guard. Then stuck up above in heaven, and wow, wins that fight against Pishu. That was a very interesting debacle up there on top, on upper side, back of sight. Puts Oklahoma, though, into the first round win for their pistol and breaking the a lot of what teams do, which is saying we don't want to hit B site nearly ever. We do it as a surprise. They go straight for it, commit heavy with the Suge upfront frenzy, and now they can essentially repeat the exact same thing. Heavy emphasis on the SMGs, get Suge as close as possible into controlling space, use Koa to make sure they can't retreat safely and try to draw a line of sights, and find as much value as they can in the early stages while keeping Charlotte locked down at whoever is there as best as possible, as that sentry drone gets a ton of intel, and that's 2 players spotted, but there's 3 actually here for Charlotte, and they overextend Ruda, what's happening? But it doesn't matter! C's will eventually die to a salvo, but wow, 2 kills with a Sheriff opens up the chances, but Pie out of nowhere on Pie Watch now for a 3rd kill in this round. And could very well find it as it's just Sif remaining. The spike takes the rotate through C main around Mound and into the C site.
Well, Pie's gotten 3. Where's the point 14? I don't really know if that's possible.
3.1, so they'd have 1 death from round 1.
Well, we can factor in damage.
Is there 4 assists? Do you think they have 4 assists?
Like...
Quick, crazy, pull up the... Or don't. No, that's too early. Things are... No, stop!
3-1-4, yeah, it could be 3 kills, 1 death, 4 assists.
What's 3 kills?
Oh, I already broke it though.
No, that's oh yeah, because they did get a kill in round 1.
No, you could just get assists from this point out, maybe.
Did they? How many assists did they get in that round? 3.1. They need 3 assists. They need 3 assists. They're on Pie Watch. I'm not technically incorrect, but I am technically also incorrect. That's a great thing about technicality. They can apply both directions. But it's been a tough first round for Charlotte. But they got a lot of value in round 2. We say you have to get 3 kills to feel really good about it. 2 kills, you can maybe argue is the victory. 4? Yeah, you won round 2, and now Oklahoma have to pull off a dirty buy. 1 Vandal in the hands of Suge, and a Ghost, a Stinger, and a Sheriff. This is disjointed as all get out.
It usually is. I mean, Charlotte usually is kind of in the ballpark when it comes around to making these weird financial decisions, but I mean, they always end up kind of looking just good nonetheless. But with Suge being on the field and able to go ahead and get out of first, we have seen and expected from map number 1 underway. I mean, the second and the third, while, you know, surprising, very much welcome, because, well, we have seen it. We were expecting something like that and expecting this player to be just pressing W throughout the entire map. But off the back of that last round, things aren't looking too good for Charlotte, as we have seen a bit of a purchase come out from Oklahoma once more, and they are just forcing their way down the field and have gotten themselves free plants every single round, it feels like. So long as they just have with the free space, they just really just have to press that forward button. But great start for them. Fuzzy, understandably so, not wanting a piece of that action. You're in a 1v4 kind of scenario. You're holding on to this gun and then hoping you can make a miracle happen in the next.
I just don't know why Charlotte are putting 3 players out in the open of A lobby, or A main, I guess I should say. Why they're putting 3 players so openly out in the open when they have the advantage of range and distance. Top of back stairs. Really the only person you need there. Break door link to connect into B. They can have a long range shot to the initial archway connecting out of B main, out of that hall. And you also have the crossfire of the player trying to take door switch into garden. There's so many better angles at which to stay into. And instead, you have 3 fatally just driving themselves into a terrible situation. 1 close on pillar, another one farther out, just out in the space between that and switch, and then the other one just right next to where ult orb was, maybe wanting to fight for the ult orb economy in round 3 for some reason, when you would have gotten plenty of pips across your team from the, you know, averaging about a kill each of them per round prior to that, and then having deaths, which tallied even higher. It's not like it's a necessity for Charlotte's. But what happens, it costs them dearly. And Oklahoma will do what we kind of saw at the beginning of Ascent in the first half. They'll break the mold, but it's not a 1-2 split. It's a 3-0 start coming out from Oklahoma as they play this engagement early for some long-range contention and try to keep Charlotte a player down for necessity as they want to take into the C site with a heavy presence here into Mount.
Yeah, I mean, we usually see these fights occurring on Mount before you can really start touching the side, but we don't have much of an actual presence here just yet to go ahead and get things kicked off. But even then still, that allows a lot of flooded utility to be coming in on the side. I mean, with the showstopper being run out by Suge, well, you could have expected maybe a second, but the showstopper does enough damage to go ahead and get your own self-kill. But with the Armageddon still in hand, I mean, that's going to be enough to nile for everything else. And you're just looking to see if anybody on the side of Charlotte can actually go ahead and facilitate this retake. But I mean, it's going to be a lot to really ask for, because with early util coming out, you don't have players only over towards back on that spawn and Dune side. Everybody else is still just looking back towards spawn, and who else than Clever to go ahead and just find a free wraparound, get 2 kills off the back of it, and make this be a nightmare thus far. Min wants to double down there as well, wants to just be present, wants to be here and fight. And with Fuzzy being there looking to get 1, has a half tick, It's nothing but a shaft they're up against, so free pickings if so long as you're there to hit it, and that's exactly what's done to make that clutch manageable, get the job done, and get yourself on the board here for Charlotte.
Reload! Why not? Trust that you got wallbang shots. Trust the teammate to get a tap or two. What in the world? Oklahoma have a round 4 in their grasp. So many flashes. Yes, for Charlotte on the retake. The arc rose placed in just back of sight next to box, next to jump. 2 flashes coming out from your breach of C's. Upper left side of waterfall exits. That gets all of the initial entrance of the archway into C and back of sight. You had clear coverage from C's. Also in defender spawn if you were on the side there of Oklahoma. Or sorry, not from C's, but from Clever. That should have been as easy as a hold. You never got anyone flashed. Their utility was completely useless up to that point, and all it got you was a player over towards Spike, and then the fights just fell apart. That is a rough round to eat on the chin if you're Oklahoma. But will it be the big knockout one? As look at these shots from Ruda. Gets 3 finally. It takes a bit for Pi, but they'll find it nonetheless. Eat up, King. As C's gets a refrag from the loss of Sif, and it's 1 remaining for Charlotte. And it's just... how much can you fall apart? Is this flipped, by the way? How much can you fall apart? The extension out. Oh, there it is. Fuzzy not able to get through, or not having any problems getting through, as map control is there for the Charlotte defense.
I mean, just good look to there. I mean, obviously the start is seemingly the finish as well when it comes around to that round. I mean, you're expecting the A allocation. You're expecting somewhat of a player to be stationed relatively close up forward and aggressive. More times than not, it's an omen, keep in mind, so they can actually kind of get that shrouded step and get up top on top of that kind of pillar and have a bit of coverage and play that kind of and make that an angle of 3 or 4 better yet than just kind of the 3 or 2. But I mean, still, as of yet, I mean, expected that Ruda is at the point where the guy's getting irritated. Not really at the top of the board, not really putting in all the work that needed so far, and is getting shut down relatively consistently by Suge, as you can tell right here, right now, being a prime example of what we've been seeing the most of the game. So, I mean, just looking for any opportunity, and it's just not found here. So with the push of C trying to go ahead and be forced out by 2 players, with Suge being at the head of the charge, everybody else is going ahead and making their home over towards A, and they're not seeing much contention in the meantime.
Fuzzy's going to be top of rope. Box shots off towards Pi. Doesn't connect initially, but was really darn close to doing so, and all of Oklahoma managed to get themselves up towards sight. Fuzzy will stall a little bit, wanting to take drop, but doesn't have the safety to do so now with the thorns just below them. But will have the chance to do so. They will eventually make their drop, and now they wait. Fuzzy. Crossfire to Min, a shocking affair, but the Rolling Thunder doesn't catch Suge within it. But the stun now back from C's will, and they'll deal with that raise very quickly thereafter. An even 3-on-3. Clever kept back now, but the breach opposing them as C's. One more chance. Rose Garden goes out, and this is a bad spot to be for this potential retake. C's avoids a lot of it, but it's not a good spot to sit. A 2v1 rushing towards Pi does isolate him, but you got so much free information here from this drone. They'll stick it for the most part, fire through the wall, and wow! C swings out just in time and has just enough time to defuse on top. Clutch after clutch after clutch for Charlotte for their wins. Whether it's Ruda getting 3 amazing frags at the start of an exit approach here into the A site of this map and the A hall of this map for Oklahoma, or it's big plays in the final few moments of 2v1s. No matter the case, Charlotte need to find better starts so they can close these out better.
I really wish we could have seen the actual just kind of POV of the Tejo there for a little bit longer and just seeing kind of how that utility was counting down in the meantime, because, I mean, it was nothing but difficulties there. I'm just trying to go ahead and keep things rolling. I mean, Koa constantly trying to just look for something, but being on that drone, you're essentially held hostage. You want to know whether or not the defuse is going to be a bit of a fake or whether it's actually being committed towards. And even at that point, I mean, of course it'd be committed towards. You're inside of a drone. I mean, it's a no-brainer at that point where obviously I'm looking at a little bug that's not going to hurt me, so I'm going to try to get as much progress as I can. But I mean, everything else following off the back of it, we're looking at a bit of a scuffle going on towards C-site. But still, once again, nobody wants to contest this mount. It is just constantly pushing into sight, and that's where the utility's going to be. Fuzzy expectedly gets that first blood, but everything following is just nothing but Oklahoma.
Bad spot to lie in wait. Charlotte left with just 2. Spike having gone down, and Ruda and C's have to engage into a site that seems nigh impossible. The Roomba ensures nobody's in Waterfall for the time being, but Min is just around the corner. The peak, their shoulder spotted, but they spotted nothing. They didn't notice Ruda get past them! The boost pack just enough, a secondary slide. Stepping away from their utility, a counter ult now from Oklahoma out of Pi. And the Garden will make sure that Ruda and C's have no weapon to work with. And there's the dumpy utility, keeping them off of the spike for the time being. Salvo goes in. Headshots clean for C's, but Ruda just doesn't have anything. Could have been, maybe should have been. Ruda won't even have a chance to stick this one to half. There's just too much utility control. They play for an exit frag, and they maybe want one more. Koa not allowed to leave, and they will fall just at the last moment. Ruda the shooter gets a third for themselves. The second time we've now seen from it, but this time not enough to carry Charlotte to a victory.
I mean, not a bad shout in terms of just kind of what you're being dished out right there. Going ahead, finding those exit frags, guaranteeing every single player falls in the process, knowing that you have 3 ultimates for a round like this. And I mean, understandably calling the timeout to figure out how to dish those out, or better yet, in what order if you even want to do such. Because, I mean, seeing how many resources are available to you, the one thing you're lacking is going to be those guns. I mean, the money isn't really stacked up, but even then still, if you went around like this and you can turn it around, knowing that a lot of this money is going to be invested into the guns rather than the actual armor, you find yourself possibly an outlaw. I mean, even then, these are going to be a lot of one-taps for the majority of the Oklahoma team. So, I mean, it comes down to whether you want to make these investments, and depending how the allocations are in terms of the actual players, you could see a lot of good efforts come through for this. And I think, honestly, going ahead and finally possibly fighting Mound for a little bit and having an outlaw on hand, that should technically be 2 players to go ahead and knock off if you play it right.
Value for these first picks, something that Charlotte want to try to engage with and not let Oklahoma try to go as quickly into these sites as they do. We've seen Oklahoma have pretty good battles off towards Mound, trying to get those first impactful frags and forcing Charlotte away. It's this utility dump simulator, man. It looks a whole lot like R6 back 3 years ago, even when you were still casting at the time and playing a ton, right? It feels so much just dump utility, dump utility, dump utility. For those of you who don't know about that game, despite it being 15 years old, feels a lot like Marvel Rivals, dump ult after dump ult after dump ult. It is a very much so utility-focused meta right now in Valorant. And a lot of that's going to come off even further now with the ultimates being online for Charlotte. Annihilation will eviscerate any offensive contention here towards B. If you place that inside hall, it's very nearly impossible to get away from it, especially if you go right to left. They'll have to step into its initial destructive force for it. Posing in for the side, you have a showstopper again being now charged up for Ruda. This gives you a chance for a easy kill or two to maybe isolate a backline if you do try to vie for Macrocho, which does seem like Ruda may have the option to do so, playing just over towards A entrance out into main, but they will have to deal with Fuzzy first in, or sorry, Pie first for the side of Oklahoma, and they get their just desserts in this sense, being absolutely taken care of with felled ease. And they'll rotate the whole team over now for Oklahoma to the A side because they don't have to worry about that showstopper nor the Rays, who's been so effective in these few clutch rounds now for Charlotte.
Yeah, I mean, slow start here for Oklahoma. Going ahead and at least trying what they can over towards B. Don't really manage too much. Looking for the rotation back towards A. Clearly, no players can be allocated relatively aggressively there because it's not the start of the round anymore. There's only 30 seconds remaining. So while you have a singular player of Fuzzy, or Pie, better yet, trying to push up and trying to get something to work with here, it's just going to be all for naught. It's going to be nothing but time, nothing but a distraction, nothing but an utter nuisance. And even then, still getting the ultimate off in the process there, you're just running from Pichu. You're just looking to see if this guy will drop dead in the meantime, and still you manage to get the second kill. That's 2 ticks to play with, and everybody on Charlotte is looking to now rush and get themselves back over to A, or C, because, I mean, that's where the spike is. There's never any intention to put anything over towards A. Just a singular player, a couple kills. Seeds can get one, and it's in the 1v2 situation where Ko is looking to get something, but there's more than enough time to find that trade and get that round to play with, to equalize these rounds, keep things close, because Oklahoma and Charlotte, this is a matchup that should not be meeting a bigger discrepancy than 2-3 rounds by the end of it.
Jeez, that's your teammate. Come on now. Goodness gracious, though. We talk a lot about individual players for a lot of teams. Japin was the big one for Columbia Phoenix, right? For the side of Charlotte, a lot of the emphasis comes down to players like Sif and players like C's. And C's has been, I think, arguably the more consistent force for the side of Charlotte as their initiator. For a lot of accounts for us in our previous splits, we've said that C's may be one of the best initiators here in the SEL. And while there's, you know, top dog Columbia Phoenix now that are, or Cumberland Phoenix, why am I saying Columbia? Cumberland Phoenix now in the pool to contend with, I still would argue C's can contend with a lot of the initiators across the board for every team in the SEL. And that's not to say Southeastern Esports doesn't also have a really good selection of players. Jack's really darn good, but there's just a difference, it feels like, when the breach is in the hands of C's. It just feels like they're home. As that showstopper finally is ripped out for Oklahoma side, they charge it up again, and Suge uses it to get a kill, and there is no resurrection back available for this Charlotte Clove. Putting Charlotte now, yes, a player down, but still a player up in total advantage. And Oklahoma don't really have the best straights to get in towards a site. An eco round laid in front of them, and they want to try to maybe get Suge an opportunity for a long-distance arraignment for a fight. But as long as Charlotte have a 2v1 in that engagement, they lose out. You don't have to worry about a second or third rifle being involved in that fight because there is only one in the total hands for Oklahoma's offense.
Still enough leeway for that Clove smoke to go up towards over the staircase if you really want to have that coverage. But I mean, even then, as you mentioned, I mean, Suge more than likely probably going to be looking for these lineups, looking to get into these gunfights, because we've seen this guy win against Ruda time and time again. But every now and again, Ruda will get the leg up. And when it happens, well, it's off the back of a spree. We saw that 3K over towards A site earlier on. Now 4K to go ahead and just really nail home that 3K to close it out. And that's enough to go ahead and give Charlotte the lead here in terms of this matchup. So, I mean, it is every here and there. And again, we'll see Ruda kind of go ahead and win that matchup. But even then still, it's because, well, Ruda has a much bigger discrepancy when we talk about the top end to the lower end of these two teams, where Ruda obviously being at 11 compared to the 2 that is Sif. Meanwhile, Min being on that 4, while Stooge is at that 9. I mean, the entire range of kills for Oklahoma is much closer. And we've seen that be consistent in terms of Ascend as well, because, I mean, they were keeping that relatively close between each other. But Charlotte, it's a matter of they are stepping up and everybody's kind of doing their job earlier on, rather than having to wait for that wake up during the second half to really kind of get things rolling. But still, I mean, it's enough for them to go ahead and have a round lead right now. It's a better late than never, sure, but they got to make sure to really keep this thing kind of in control here, because that last round, Oklahoma didn't really know where to go. We haven't seen very many rounds like that when they look like they're a little bit discombobulated and don't know where to really put their next line of sight towards.
Suge avoids the fuzzy util on site for the Vines. Does not want to step through those Vines. Future just around the corner. Could be in a contestation here against Suge. And they will have the first shot. It's an extra swing by the Clove now once more. Suge just steps into the annihilation. Does not care. Anything Ruda can do, I can do just as good. I just need the 4K. And they're hunting for C's now, the last one standing. And there it is. Raises eat up. It is a feast for the eyes and a feast for your duelists. I was just about to comment, Ruda has been one of the more entertaining players you could watch. It's very rare to see teams trade out very specific roles for players across their teams. And Suge says, yeah, we may be lacking, we may be missing a couple players that you may miss a lot for those who used to watch the SCL the prior splits and seasons from Oklahoma, but we have made great substitutions and found a new home for these players in our rosters that are currently here. 13-8 now for Suge. They did not like hearing that Ruda got the better end of them in that round prior, Dallas. The arraignment of where they were on the scoreboard in terms of order, that tier list, that bracketed objective viewpoint of it. They want this game to still be tied, and they do it in a way that absolutely usurps everybody trying to move from Waterfall. Maybe too many eggs in the basket through that alley.
It's a matter of style, though. I mean, you look at Ruda. I mean, it seems like on this map so far, the guy has had to have a lot of pre-existing conditions met in order to kind of get these strings of kills, a little bit of a stressor, or something to kind of really encourage the guy to find this performance. But meanwhile, I mean, you look at Ruda and things are, or Suge better yet, and things are just kind of a bit of a wild card, a flip of a coin, and just as you would expect out of a duelist, either a couple kills in a round or absolutely nothing. Really, it's just getting one, and that's all you really need. But everybody so far looking to go ahead and just really drive home this fight, where the one on Oklahoma, being Suge, isn't even alive for the rest of this. The spike isn't down. Players are running away because, well, Ruda is on site here to just go ahead and run through whatever's remaining. So Clever doesn't even get a chance to even touch the B site. Gone ahead and shut down a little bit early, and it's nothing but Koa, the bottom frag of Oklahoma, to kind of go ahead and get something done here. Or at least was before we saw that Clove kind of fall a little bit less. But, I mean, there we go. Ruda, as I said, having conditions, needing these expectations, needing somewhat of a stressor to really kind of get that ball rolling. But with Suge, it's just more so, I mean, we've seen this guy press W onto his site, find kill after kill after kill, like it's absolutely nothing. We've seen the guy have clutch moments. We've seen the guy push and post-plant scenarios and making sure to sustain that flawless that we saw 2 rounds ago. I mean, each player has their own kind of things to really be running into. But Charlotte, you could also make that as a testament to the fact that they're on defense, and your Rays just more so waiting for a spike to go down or just feeling awkward having players swing into them without any kind of setup prior.
Keep in mind, Was it Oklahoma went 7-5 at halftime? The previous map of Ascent was able to close out fairly well in the second half. It looks like Charlotte are primed to maybe have the same stance, but it was a close call in that final round as well. It came down to in the final 3 as well. Major clutches by Koa, but we could see it go 6-6, especially with Oklahoma now starting off with 2 first bloods, and a lot of the effective force being the contention in towards C in that hallway around Mound. But Oklahoma wisen up from re-peaking an engagement that they don't really want to have heavy emphasis towards. Their raids has already been tapped quite a bit, and Sif is exceptionally low as their Teo. So what can you do? So it's actually Sif is in Charlotte, if I recollect. I'm so used to both of these teams that it's hard for me to get them separated sometimes. But they will have to be very wise about where they need to peek into. Couple in through door. Maybe play from main. There's a smoke there that can deny, so maybe you leave your Teo further back for a post plant with some utility usage. But Min is out in front of the rest of space and pays the price for it. Showstopper for Suj, and through the smoke is able to deny Pichu, and they'll resurrect thereafter. And it's just a game of trying to avoid these lines of sight. 50% left. Down to 25, and absolutely nothing being given to Pichu. It's a loss of life, and Oklahoma will still maintain that player advantage, but Spike has not gone down. They do not have a foothold yet onto site. One player in drop. Fuzzy just on the inside lane of Hut. Now stun. They're trying to make a rotate away. Is it off towards B? They'll break through door. They want to get in towards site, and they will have the chance to do so very cleanly, though only losing 1 in that process. You got 2 very, very low players if you're on Oklahoma, and even your highest HP one is only sitting at about 78 in total. Oklahoma will be hard pressed. They feel they've got to go heavy-handed here, as they will use the Garden to lock away these primary weapons and buy themselves just inklings of time, and maybe keep these very disjointed jump peaks and more away from happening. And Clever's down below going unspotted, getting some damage once again off towards C's, but Suge closure, it's there for Oklahoma. We're tied 6-6 at halftime. This series is unreal.
Yeah, 1 health is all it really takes there, obviously, to get the job done. And when you got so many spare bodies to throw at the problem, especially with that initial trade going out, I mean, it's enough for Oklahoma to say that this should be manageable at any time of day, and they make sure to do at least that. I mean, it's the execution, it's the expectations that they set for themselves, and when it comes around to just looking at teams, it's one of those teams that we're saying it should go like this, regardless of health. And they make sure to be consistent in that manner. But, I mean, having a 6-6 half, this is great because, I mean, obviously, as you mentioned in that prior map, it was a 7-5, and it ended up being that 13-10 in favor of Oklahoma. This should be one of those points where we don't see that discrepancy. We should be possibly seeing an OT or a 13-11. It should be as close as literally possible, just to really drive home the fact of what this kind of series means for both of these 2 teams and the odds that are at stake for both of them.
Chance now. Ruda extends heavy into the open. Pistol round. We saw a lot of emphasis from Oklahoma on that attempted front, but Suge not get lucky this time on their defense. Min also taken out of the equation. Pi is the only one who found anything defensively for Oklahoma, and Ruda, who is in a very interesting spot, having got all the way through to the back of B site, wrapping through Waterfall, uses that as a stance to get long shots into the back of Mound and take down yet another Oklahoma roster. It'll be a plant for C's. Time, not really a major factor. They're close to side, but this numbers advantage is really hard to fight against in a pistol round when not really anything is being brought by either side. Salvos to force C's close. They will die to that. Koa just has to take a step the other direction, and though they'll fall, Ruda is the one to do so and gets 3 pips early, and this is not a player you want to have charging their ultimate right off the rip, nor the confidence they already had exiting that first half. They're 3 pips through.
Oh, and even then, I mean, Charlotte's one of those teams where, I mean, every single team, they've lost a pistol round. They've ended up still opting in for the Sheriffs during the follow-up. So I was very curious to see what it looks like when they do win a pistol round, and a lot more money invested than I really had thought. I thought they were still going to possibly go for the Sheriffs, maybe, just say, look, we're kind of used to this, and Oklahoma shouldn't be really purchasing up, so we could save the money for the 3rd round and create the equilibrium there, especially on the attack side when you get the extra 300 creds in the plant. No, sir! We're not buying 1 Vandal. We're buying 2. We still got the Bulldog. We don't have a Guardian, surprisingly enough, but I mean, it is a lot of money being thrown here at your problems. And I think clearly when you get to this kind of situation where you're opening the door and the floodgates, it should be something, but it is Suge. They are able to go ahead, be on that B site, swing out, find 3, make it a really expensive round for this team, but still not dead to the cause just yet.
Oklahoma's won. They found enough value in this round. They can quantify it, and it just gets worse.
They can genuinely win it.
They may genuinely win this. Sheriff out, but Fuzzy, who was a little slow to get things started for Charlotte, obviously came back alive. Ascent was a bit of a a tough battle for them. A lot of the limelight was stolen by Sif, who was doing really well for them overall, though, and that's really where your Teo and Vice combo comes in for full effect. But somehow Lotus always turns a little bit different, Dallas. Somehow it's always the Vice that steps up to lead the charge in comparison to things like the Teo, where on Ascent, the Teo can be the best fragger and is statistically up there as the first or second. Lotus is the total opposite. Teo does not bring as much effective impact in the frag department. You want to really rely on the utility further back in your life. It's the most valuable thing here. A lot like Pearl. And the Vice here stealing a lot of that limelight. That's Fuzzy, leading Charlotte now to an 8-6 start. That last round was dirty, and Oklahoma arguably win that as Ruda wants to go high. The judge at that range is unreal, but Suge gets 4. Dastardly corner tuck behind box, and not a single person cleared that in the rush.
Oh, I mean, if you don't check that, obviously drastic in the first place. But when you don't check it when Suge is there, it's yeah, this round is just burned off rip. So, I mean, expecting an ace, why not just go for it? I mean, there's 3 players behind you. Rush the guy down and just say, showstopper, worst case scenario if I end up dying here for the next one. And we just run it back over and over and over again. As I said earlier, I mean, talking about Rudo, what he was doing, just kind of needing those pre-existing conditions. This is the duelist difference I was expecting. I mean, obviously that one round and that one ace being a difference in terms of the kills right now, but still it feels like Suge is relatively more consistent in making sure to bring that round-to-round effect that you want out of your duelist.
Looking to prep up, it's Charlotte. Looking to split and default. I like what we saw from them on the offense on Ascent. Not as common for the map of Lotus. A lot of times you just kind of poke up with 4, leave 1 straggling for flank watch, your Vise on the offensive front, and then you stagger elsewhere, rotate heavy if there is a kill, and try to poke and prod as best as you can. It's really just sending a lot of effective force to deal with the minuscule amount of defense that could be contending against you. But when you're in an eco round, it's just a whole lot harder to even go past that. Pi is playing really close here. Flash was up, but Suge gets kind of removed from any sort of contention up close because they got dealt with by a shot out from range with a Vandal, and their showstopper goes nowhere, and it's a positive engagement for Charlotte, who can then grab further weapons now that were left on site. The one of them is only a judge, and pray for that pass as Koa and Min now a second.
Wow.
And Clever from Waterfall. Oklahoma has tied us now. It's 8-8. This game just never feels in any team's control.
It never will be, quite frankly. I mean, we could see a bit of a swap up here, and I could have just cast her Curse of that to hell and back right then and there. But, I mean, everything beyond this, it's getting those later stages, and even still, I mean, the 2 for 2, it comes down to whether or not you can actually see the purchases really start to warrant the kills afterwards. And even then still, I mean, honestly, it's obviously Oklahoma, the first 2 going in Charlotte's direction. But keep in mind, that second round, it was by the nick of their teeth. I mean, it was barely any much of an actual win in their books besides just making sure they killed that last man. But in a 1v1, I mean, the economy is detrimental. They had the ultimate sure to go forward with, but Oklahoma has already made those investments, and they know that they have the money to back it up right here, right now. So it comes down to whether or not we can see these highlights, whether or not we can see the same kind of spotlight out of a duelist what we were expecting during that first half. But as I said earlier, I just don't know if that's going to happen because Charlotte cannot keep up with Oklahoma in terms of the actual arsenal in their hands.
Is Oklahoma trying to ensure they can make it to yet another SCL LAN and possibly knock on the door again in a grand finals? They have started off on the right foot. They didn't have to worry a lot about the LCQ in round 1 in our current format. When you lose in round 1, you were done, unfortunately. So we did not have a lower side. Wow, Jesus. They didn't have to worry about that. It was a forfeit game from them, which was unfortunate for us at the S. We love to see that, but good for Oklahoma. They then had a very tough round 2 that they didn't manage to get through, but still sent them into the LCQ with a poor seeding, but they are proving that seeding isn't everything. Sometimes they got rough with a bad competition early. They want to get back to the land. They want to fight with the best. They want to prove that on land they are the best. And we have seen them perform much better on land than we have seen them do in a lot of our broadcasts here. Live in person, live in an online space virtually. This is a team that elevates when they're in that close space with the competition and can converse, break things down, be surrounded by teammates and fans, be adored from the competition and kind of just energize off the cheering and the yells from the plays that go down. And I don't know if they have that in person right now. I don't know where all of these 5 are for Oklahoma. But Charlotte are finding it really difficult to deal with some of these tighter rounds for Oklahoma. And the speed of the defense trying to fight into the offense right now is crazy. You can see where Oklahoma are getting a lot of confidence from. They just want to get to 13 as fast as possible.
I mean, if we're looking obviously at the statistics, I mean, not even really the same team, of course. But in terms of like history, we've seen Oklahoma obviously go to the grand finals last year. They made it further. They had already surpassed Charlotte.
As a team that wasn't expected to get there.
Exactly. But I mean, a team that was impressive nonetheless. I mean, even if they did, they weren't expected in terms of what was the pool of talent at the LAN, but yet still they got there and they brought to all 5 games. I mean, so there's just kind of something definitely to just have a testament to there nonetheless. But beyond that, Charlotte still is one of these teams that I've been talking about historically has always made sure that things stay close in terms of the maps. They've always made things look really good. Has usually had more of an actual lackluster effort and then has a lot more clutches when they start realizing that things are starting to slip through their fingers. They've done a much better job of not actually letting that deficit get too far out of control before they have to wake up. But when you see kind of how these plays are, it feels like they're hemorrhaging small little cuts, and it's that death by 1,000 cuts that really puts them in these scenarios where they lose these. You don't want to see that. So here it is, Fuzzy waking up early saying, I hear what you're saying, Mick, and we're going to go ahead and make sure to keep this thing close once again and possibly find the lead once more, because it was early on when they defined that, but they have not held it.
Man, Fuzzy's been so lights out here on our second map, making up for the first map. They're going to have to do a whole lot more. They have the player advantage still. Spike down. They're in control, and Pichu eviscerates Koa. They add Suj into their tally list. Why not one more? What's the difference between 2 and 3? Well, I'll tell you, it starts with an M and it ends with N. It's men down for the side of Oklahoma. It's 9-9, and any separation we see starting to come apart for the two teams is almost instantly brought back to the precipice, right on the edge of a cliff. Oklahoma have a 26-13 player of Suj, but you rocking a whole team if you're Charlotte. 18-18 for Fuzzy and Ruda, and it is a back-and-forth battle between them about who can do the best. And Fuzzy has now got the Garden online for this round, meaning if they have to, they can stall. If they want to, they can rush and shut down what Oklahoma have been bringing early in these engagements when it comes to fighting heavy for contention. Like that last round where Fuzzy gets rushed in by 2, and the Arch is out from B main. Away from side and gets both because it's an easy spray down. A mistake that was made so often last semester that we harped on for so many teams.
First blood coming out, escaping just barely with their life there in the process, but still even then, nice little trade somewhere else around the map. But I mean, even then looking at Pichu, looking at what's being done there, I mean, you're trying to race, you're trying to find something, maybe find any kind of kill, because that B side is completely clear. When all the spike is going down, you're seeing whether or not somebody's going to pop their head. It's a very clear indicator, and somehow Pichu still makes it. Stays alive. You're just rogue at this point. You're going to be a big roadblock for everything else for this C site, knowing that, hey, I was here. I was just hoping to have another chance at life. And not only have I found that, but I've also created enough space for the team to go somewhere else. But they've been sitting on B for the past, 15 seconds and refuse to make themselves at home somehow. But Rude is saying, for the love of God, if I'm pushed out one way, we got Pichu out in another. Surely you should have the time to get it done.
Min trying to play from upper side heaven. Pichu lagging below, and Pi has a cross, but unfortunately the only contender they had with Min goes down, but they knew where C's was. They just didn't know where Fuzzy was. No tracers to give them intel. No value for the remainder after, and Charlotte will be the first team to knock now at double digits. It's 10 for this side. And it would be a very dangerous game to say if we see Niner Esports main team make it through round 1 of the playoffs, and we don't see Charlotte pull off the exact same thing. This primary roster will have to watch their secondary team face off against UGA Black next week. And if I had to pick between the value for these two teams, Niner Esports main team versus Charlotte, at who could do better against UGA, I would put Charlotte up there just edged above Niner Esports main team, even though I think any match between Niner Esports main team and Charlotte could go any direction, as we saw from their previous best of 3 series that went to all 3 and how close it was across all maps. Charlotte has a little bit of an edge playstyle-wise in my mind against UGA Black, who are a little bit more undisciplined in their playstyle and can really punish styles like that, because Niner Esports are also a little undisciplined in the way that they perform and play. So Charlotte want to get through. Tough opponent in front of them still nonetheless, but it's going to be a battle of contention as they try to lock on to the 11th round in front of them, and it's just a utility play. Some great flash gets rid of Min, but the shots of a Sheriff come out from Koa and get rid of 2. Showstopper, there you go. Rifle up, and Suj just needs 1 from a teammate, and there it is. Double digits for both, and the game goes back and forth again.
I mean, it's Oklahoma who's able to go ahead and really make these plays when they're down in the domes. I mean, keep in mind on Ascent, that round where they had nothing but classics for the most part to work with, and they still managed to keep things equal, make things just absolutely abysmal for Charlotte. Even then, the second round of this map, or even better yet, this half, we saw them get the kills, make it, and diminish it down to a singular player. It's these times and times and times again when Oklahoma, they show so much potential, look so darn good. You're not quite sure if it's Charlotte's complacency, which I haven't really noticed enough to kind of really highlight, because I don't feel like that's the root cause of this. It's Oklahoma saying, once again, as I mentioned, the pre-existing conditions for specifically Ruda on that side of Charlotte for finding these just big string of kills. It's Oklahoma in that same stance where we can play the game, but if there's enough of a stressor on us, we can make this look amazing. And they just need to find a way to really just nurture that feeling and make it present every single round.
Fuzzy falls back. The Rolling Thunder out for Charlotte, and Oklahoma want to get a free fight, but they don't. Suge tries to go for the double boost back in, pays the price. Man, peeks in heavy. We'll get a Resurrect and play for more. Has assistance from Pi. This could be a valuable chance. As a runaway play for C's, just away from the Rolling Thunder. Countered, and it's a 2-on-2. Pi sprays through a wall. Down goes Pichu. It's C's and a 1v1 with their doppelganger. And Clever's been so darn good, but we said C's is the highlight reel for Charlotte on every map in all their roles. And they get the 11th for him, getting the edge just in front of this Oklahoma roster, which is a necessity. We saw what happens when Oklahoma gets there first, knocks on the gates of overtime. They cannot be kept away from it. And Charlotte has to make sure they get there first, at minimum, for this dangerous, dangerous map that's proven to be Lotus.
Yeah, just looking to be something here. But, I mean, they still have the purchase on hand. They still have at least somewhat of a buy into their belt when it looks on the side of Oklahoma. The two ultimates to play with are equal on both sides when you see the Armageddon and the Steel Garden. And I'm surprised Charlotte's still looking as good as they are with Sif barely having any word inside this matchup. We have been through 21 rounds and this guy has 2 kills. I mean, you got to be kissing the toes of your team after this one to be like, thank you for managing this for us. But as I mentioned the guy's name, he doesn't want to kiss any toes. He wants to get more kills as he managed to get himself a third to trade off things initially and, well, hopefully send this thing into a map point. But as it stands so far, Oklahoma, they're the ones holding their ground. They're the ones not really crossing that threshold too much until finally we see men wanting a bit of a fight and ends up finding themselves dead on the end of it.
Koa does at least get their trade, the impactful frag to alleviate maybe some damage if they go down, and they did. So 1 for 1. In terms of opening kills, it's been very back and forth. And a lot of the rounds aren't even determined off the value of that opening kill, which is another factor that is somewhat apparent throughout the staging of these rounds. It's really the post plants that make the biggest difference in where these openings are being created against the Charlotte offense. They're into sight. One player's too far away towards bottom stairs, and it's a free frag. You're now down to a 2v2. The entire man advantage you were trying to rely on Harp on is gone. You have Sif trapped in towards the back of sight. Rose goes down, and Clever. They did not buy Sheriffs for this round, despite having the idea that it was ready. They're sticking this, do they? No, it won't matter. The salvos go down. The swing from Fuzzy. They got it to half and a little bit more, but the round will still fall to the Charlotte side. They are at match point. The bottom left is not correct. It was Oklahoma who took our map 1. Don't know why it's saying Charlotte. We're looking into that. Have been looking into that. We've had some weird doc issues throughout the day. Hashtag blame Fred. That's as much as I can give you. But man, oh man, forcing a map 3 here and seeing us go off to Icebox to see either of these players and these teams get iced out for a potential shot into LAN and throughout the remainder of the playoffs with this split would be an absolute amazing way to close off the night.
Yeah, and already a good start coming out from C's here. Able to go ahead and manage that first blood with the Odin in hand. A bit of a wild card, but I mean, when you're looking at the map point, it's enough to go ahead and get the job done. So long as it's dependent the player that's dead is enough of an influence. And even then with the Clove being dead, I mean, you're not really too concerned because while the smoke still can go up, you're going to navigate yourself to the other side of the map where it's not even much of an actual factor. But it just comes down to once more where we talk about these duelists. Can they get the efforts? Can they get the job done? And we already see Suge able to go ahead and get one done. Rooted is now out for the count. Stinger being passed off and upgraded. Suge able to find another one with that paint shell in hand. And with the Armageddon being flooded out, Oklahoma had themselves a man advantage, and they may even find themselves a bit more of one. So long as Cole can hit this last shot, and he most definitely does. So over and over and over again, as I mentioned, Oklahoma, they just need a stressor and nothing more than a map point for the time being to really get it done.
The problem with Fuzzy that I saw also on Ascent, which you can't really harp too much on their Ascent play, but we saw it like 3 times there. We've now seen it twice on this map. We see it especially there. when they are facing a player who swings, they're expecting the swing to stop the moment they see them. Every time. They want to spray the moment that they stop. But you're seeing that last fight there. Fuzzy stops, plays the angle against Koa. Koa does not stop just on the exit out from the archway for a peek. They take 2 more steps to their left, and then they take the shot. Or technically right for them at that stance. They are willing to take an extra advancement forward because they want to throw off the initial recoil pattern and to transfer over to force them to move. And all they got to do is steady themselves for a single shot at any moment because they got a sheriff in their hand. It's punishing Fuzzy's playstyle. I don't know if this is something that Oklahoma are like, okay, we see the vice. This is what they're troublesome with. But Koa has now done that multiple times. It was Koa as well the first time I saw it on Ascent that they did it against them with. Fuzzy's going to have to make big changes for that because if Charlie get through this and Oklahoma doesn't force OT and close it out, you cannot let that be a problem to rise through playoffs because JMU are already watching and they don't want to let anything happen. Min goes for the best play possible, trying to copy Ruda. But Koa and Clever, what a blender! In Oklahoma, reach OT and force it. It's a whole nother set of Valorant, baby. Dallas, we're going to be here for quite a while longer, it feels like.
Yeah, this is while people usually get excited, it just depends on the team that you're looking at. Sometimes it results from a comeback. You're expecting, hey, this is going to look good, but it may go ahead and be closed out quickly. But for us, I think me and Scott are going to be held hostage for probably a couple more hours.
Hostage? I mean, I've got Stockholm Syndrome then.
I mean, if it's on Lotus compared to Split when we were on CVAL, I'll take Lotus every day of the week.
Of Split, I'll gladly take that on Lotus over.
Every day of the week. But, I mean, even then still, we didn't have too many just kind of wild card moments on this one. This comes down now to a point where we were talking about the duelist matchup. We were talking about seeing the consistency, and we've seen Suge find more strings of kills over the course of rounds. As I said earlier, Oklahoma has found more flawlessly. They have found more strings of kills, but it is Pichu now waking up on Charlotte's side saying, I don't care what strings of kills look like. I already have one of my own to kick off this round and hopefully give him the leg up.
Got to get more, though. And Oklahoma want to find a chance on offense. It's been a while since they've seen this. They don't want to have to play for heavy defense. It was already pretty difficult for them. Obviously, 6-6 in both sides. But the way that which Oklahoma won their defending rounds was a lot different than the way that they took their offensive ones. It's a utility game right now with a few remnants that are here on the offense. Plays in, 2 players close, in through the archway to see. Suge will go heavy deep towards defender's side. That should have hit, but just off to the right of Fuzzy's head. Clever has to refrag, and it's a 2 times player disadvantage, a 4-on-2. Clever wants to watch Waterfall. Their teammate will stack up for a plant. That's Pi. And 2 people squeak through the initial door plant off towards Mound, and Pi will fall back away from the salvos. Jump peek. That's a bad jump peek. That's the second bad jump peek we've seen from Oklahoma in this series, on this map. And it just has to go all for Clever. They get 3 in the round, but they needed 2 teammates to get 1. And it just isn't there our first round of OT.
I mean, Clever got his 2 in that process. I mean, as long as you have another player there allocated, even then still Ruda was pushing up through main, could be that player to get shut down, and possibly as a coincidence, you don't see that other one getting killed. So, I mean, who knows? A lot of things, a lot of possibilities, a lot of probabilities that are thrown up into the air, but I mean, everything lands and the cookie crumbles exactly how we see before us. I mean, but looking at going ahead of this and looking into this next round and seeing what's going to be done, I mean, Oklahoma's defensive side, I mean, even though we do see obviously equilibrium on both ends of the board, I still see Oklahoma's defense being a little bit better because, I mean, just in general, the way they were finding these strings of kills, the more so kind of how they're putting up the pressure and exerting that towards that spawn. So long as not everybody understands when they should be doing this, they're giving up this B site completely, and they do already have that mound control to go ahead and pop that door if they hear it. I mean, the drone going through, surely we'll see Suge maybe press that switch, and we can see that fight being taken place with Devise, but that's not the case there. Instead, they're just waiting. The push is up there, and I've seen this before. Suge has been in a corner, but thankfully you got Fuzzy there to make the trade and not have 3 players die as a consequence.
Eyes in a bad spot, forced to take a step back. Phantom shots continuing in from Waterfall, lying within the smoke, just at the edge, and a drone also to force them back. Charlie don't have the best space to stand into. 2 players trapped to the archway, 2 deep in back of sight towards default. And everyone from Oklahoma is inside Waterfall. You don't want to be here when there's a raise in the opposing side, but you dealt with them. It's just the Teo, and you got to get out of there before that salvo recharges. Okay. Min reheals off the frag. Sif gets a great shot to Pi, but they can't get more, and it's only Fuzzy. In a 2v1, that flash gets nobody, and they're trigger just goes awry because the shots that Clever hits forces the aim punch to go above him. And it will be a full another round of OT in front of us as Oklahoma force us at 13-13. And as for off screen, we're in an OT battle now, and this could determine if we need a third map, and it could be a 1-1 series going on to Icebox. GMU, though, has guaranteed they have knocked out UTC. It was 13-10 on the final map. They almost let UTC actually come back into that one, but they will go on to face Texas State, and they are proven that though they got knocked out, Dallas, of the contention for Pool 1, because they were a team that was shocked to not be there initially, right? And JMU's up there instead. Where's GMU? UTC didn't have the best of straights up there. It's going to happen. And GMU kind of punished them here. Get them in the 2-0 for the round 1 of playoffs and secure their stance to go for round 2 against the Texas State University.
We haven't seen very much Texas State, especially here on broadcast. And even then, I mean, Texas State still managing to get themselves into playoffs is impressive nonetheless, knowing that even then we saw some early FS come out of them.
They were in winner's circle. That's the craziest part. We didn't see much from them, and they still made winner's circle, not even needing LCQ.
Well, both these teams got to win this one out if they want to meet either one of these teams. They got to continue through the bracket, and well, obviously, with the scuffle on site that's going through, it's Charlotte once again on this defense, just making a run through literally everyone. I talked about Sif earlier, how the guy only had 2 kills after 21 rounds, but seemingly manages to match exactly that number, at least in this round alone. So clearly everyone on the end, I mean, we've had our warm-up area. We have had our actual games already take place, and we're now on a stage where you're in excess now. You're in OT, and you got to keep the thing rolling. But Oklahoma, they are not foreign to this situation. They managed to do it in the last one. They looked clean for that retake, and as long as they find themselves at least a little bit more to kick things off, I'm not too concerned, and I do feel possibly a third one coming underway. But Charlotte, they're the wild cards. They're the ones that got to drive this thing home because they're the ones who are already down a map.
They're in control for the most part. I mean, they're getting the first rounds of these OTs now back-to-back. It's just Oklahoma somehow piecing together some really solid retakes on their defense, and just not a whole lot in the back pocket for him. Util at the ready for C's. This will fully stun Clever. Clever will send one back in return. One player will likely jump up on Crate, but C's doubles up on the Util, and Ruda has to fall back, taking a whole lot of damage in that process. And that little micro batter of Util really won by a single player on the side of Oklahoma, as Koa is the only one to find a kill, and they've gotten 2, same as Fuzzy for the side of Charlotte. It's 3-on-3, and Fuzzy has full control now off towards the C site, and Oklahoma will have to play the retake game with this drone from Koa guaranteeing nobody's an attacker spawn. They are all on C, and they need to make a rotate, probably not sending all 4 into the exact same walkway of Waterfall. Instead, let's put through 2 through attacker spawn and 1 off the opposing direction. And the reliance will be here on Min. C's close. Clever Util out. That's a jump peek and a half. C's does not get stunned by this. Flash around the bend. Both players for Charlotte done. And Fuzzy's in a bad spot, ulting the other way, and they'll catch both. That's the Utils in hand for Koa. It's Min, who's not had a hot series in this second map, trying to stick this one through. Rushed by Pichu in a classic. What else for an SCL classic to send us to map 3? Charlotte get it done in OT. We're going to Icebox, baby. The SCL's still around for some more time.
I mean, it's that whole point where you had the utility out. Fuzzy look for those last 2 kills and knows that, I mean, those 2 players are essentially free at that point. And you were one shot, that entire scuffle. I mean, it's one of those things where who are you setting things up for? Because it seems like both of you were setting up for the player on site, looking for the clove to lap around. But for what? You got to have some kind of a protection for both of these players to escort the other onto site. That could have been an Oklahoma round, but they fall a little bit short because of it, but it has been a long, tumultuous road to even get to this point because, well, they earned that. They even came back on that defense in the last couple rounds to manage to get themselves into the OT. But, I mean, it is these small mistakes I mentioned, these stressors, and there will be times when they slip through the cracks. But Charlotte, if there's anything I can say about this team, every single time they've always made sure to draw it out. So, with Oklahoma being such a strong team, is a testament to Charlotte of if there's anybody who can really do it in this bracket coming from an LCQ, this could be the team purely because they always meet the expectations of their opponent rather than setting that as their own standard.
Points matter. And points right now for playoffs, the points you can gain from this point onwards to get into LAN, for Oklahoma, this will mean everything. They will be a repeat team heading to an SCO LAN where they made it to the grand finals the first time around. And they're doing this now, lacking some of the core components that they had in that previous LAN. and they're performing very well. They had a tough start. Let's be honest. It wasn't the prettiest picture overall for them throughout these last 2 splits, but they are doing so much better. It looks like visually here. And this is another team that has enough points after their performance in the previous split to also make it to land if they move on here. This isn't confirmed. Valorant's point system is very different by all accounts, but you want to get as far as possible. But you do have another roadblock in front of you, and that being JMU. You have to get there first. And Icebox is where we're going to prove who deserves to get there primarily. And Icebox is a tough map for defending teams. It is a offensive stroke to go straight to the A side over and over again and not have to worry about anything else. It's easy peasy lemon squeezy. Let's see who Charlotte brings to the board. Will it be the Rays of Ruda, or will they bring back Sips and just try to have as much contention from map 1 Ascent as they can? Time will tell. But we'll see you after a break. See you guys soon. Before we break down Icebox that's in front of us, Dallas, let's take a moment to shout out the teams that we have lost along the way throughout playoffs. It's been 2 to this point. UTC facing off against GMU, like I had mentioned, they lose in 2-0. UAH in their third rematch against Georgia, unfortunately, also for them, bounces out, unable to close out their third series against them in a very important matchup. And they've got to hope that either UGA Red loses their NECC Division 4 game and does not make it to the grand finals, or hopes that they do if they want to see that fourth and, fully cement themselves through. And then for LCQ, every team that was in round 1 that lost, UCF Knights Rising, Bama's initial roster, which was an underdog team stepping through to it, UKY Blue, who had to forfeit their matchup against Oklahoma, Converse Valorant Gold, MSUA, Georgia Tech, who we were expecting to be one of the best tier 2 teams that did not even make it out in their battle against who else but Niner Esports main team. LA Tech Blue, another team that had a lot of troubles this semester in comparison to where they've been previously. And then UCF Knights Academy, neither of their rosters making it through. It has been a nightmare throughout the SEL as we've gone into our later stages of the season. And it's only going to get worse because one of these teams at the end of this next map on Icebox, Dallas, will have to bow out of the season, and very well may have just bowed out as well for their land chances here in May.
Yeah, and even then, it kind of depends. Things could go literally all over the place. So long as Charlotte wins this one out, Oklahoma can kind of go ahead and make a run there. Even then, you look at UGA Red, that one's not really going to happen. But if we do see UGA Black kind of bow out during next week's match, who really knows? It could be literally anything from anywhere. But I will say I'm going to go ahead and feel bad for UGA Red, because for that Cumberland matchup, they are literally going to have to study that team more than they would for their own finals.
They both agreed with UAH they were just dead next week. That was the tacit agreement they had.
That just really sucks. You got to basically drop out of school, and at that point you can't compete because you're not a student anymore. So it's a lose-lose scenario. But speaking of losing, well, we just saw Oklahoma lose the last map, but it was an OT affair. So things obviously drawn out still, whether it be win or loss. We have seen these two teams really draw things out. But talking about the compositions, things are looking relatively familiar with the exception of, the wild card on both ends. We got Fuzzy, who is an absolute unit through map number 1 and 2, and didn't really have much of a spotlight, but definitely had a lot of clips and was still just looking outstanding on that Vice, saying, as I mentioned earlier, your Vices are usually duelist players who can hold down some angles. So what are we going to do on the opposite end of the spectrum? We're going to opt in for that ISO. But another big thing is going to be Men, who's been on that Clove, on that kind of pseudo-duelist era, and it will now be swapping over into the Reyna. That's the one that intrigues me, because keep in mind, we've seen the Reyna barely be picked. More so on buying than anything else. But it's had a Sky as a backup, as an invincible bird as a follow-up flash. You're choosing one or the other, and it's just an absolute nightmare to look at. So you're always forced to turn away. Here, I'm curious to see what kind of game plan they have to really just pocket Men on that Reyna.
Change-ups are kind of the name of the game for Charlotte. They do this consistently, changing out players for players. We joked in between, did they knock out Sif after a map 2? They didn't really give them the best foot forward. They still went out. It's fine, but they did. They bring in Ruda, and Ruda's not playing a race. They're onto the Jet. I thought they would play the ISO. They've been queuing up the ISO in comp fairly frequently recently, on Icebox even. So seeing them opt to do so and go instead of the Jet and give that off to another player is fairly shocking. But like you said, the confidence of having a Vice there really playing out. As Charlotte does get that spike down now on B site. The rush here being nothing but fruitful for them. 3 in a row for frags. Fuzzy knocking Pyre for a final here ensued. Now the only one remaining in the limited util that is there is continuing to stall them out as they try to work from Snowman, and Fuzzy gets them with that Ghost. It's 1-0 start for Charlotte, as you kind of expect for them on the offense. Get there fast enough, and the rotate can't be good because there's not enough utility. There's not really much to work with. Head to a site that's a little bit less valuable for the brawl, like a site is, and you can really use that as a pivot point on the offense when there's not much contention for utility.
Even though I love teams, because we see the default kind of round 1 rushes over and over again, but we already saw that mold broken during that last map out of Charlotte as well, where typically teams will go over towards C or they'll go towards A. But in that one, they went for the B side. It was just over and over again. We're seeing these switch ups. We're seeing teams break the molds, and we're seeing them just kind of go ahead and do what they feel the most comfortable with. And that's the most, obviously, optimal way to play the game. So They're looking good, and I'm loving the angles. I'm loving the way they're kind of approaching these rounds. But even in Charlotte, having that first round under their wing, we saw what happened during that last map. They forced a lot of weapons. They had 2 Vandals off the back of it. They ended up opting in for a Bulldog as well, and even then just kind of go ahead and take it the sacrifice for some players. We're seeing it right here out of Seth. Going ahead and understand that, hey, I don't really need to buy up if the rest of my team has a weapon, and we're still kind of on that stage of equilibrium, but we're saving more money. So the Ghost has done good work. Unfortunately, Suge in that Sheriff in hand hasn't. And will you see a flawless round coming out for number 2 here from Charlotte, carrying on a good bit of eco for the next one as you see 3 Vandals being present inside of this one.
This is not a good spot to be in. Offense is so easily accessible for attacking teams on Icebox. It is just the better side typically. Not getting these pistols for Oklahoma is already going to make their defense side even more annoying. And they've lost these on rushes to the B site. And the last one was flawless. They don't even get a constellation kill. They don't even get a plant because they're not on offense, right? This was just bad. Which means heading into round 3, despite being able to buy rifles, they can't even buy full armor for everybody. Only a single kill was found the round prior as well. It's a drought. This is not what Oklahoma want. And Charlotte are looking to continue the dominance heading into round 3. Contention by Rudo, ripping off the doppelganger of Suge's head. Suge is the single top fragger in playoffs right now to this stage. 20 above Fuzzy, who is in second place. And Fuzzy was only the behind because of map 1 not doing so hot. But Oklahoma, despite losing Suge, still want their kills. They'll get 2 in quick succession off towards the A site for congestion. And now Oklahoma will fall back, wisening up to maybe Hoke and Prod, where Charlotte will head in towards this info is given from the clearance of that KJ turret there at top of mid.
Just looking really for anything here. I mean, already, a good start here from Charlotte, especially getting a little bit of extra damage off the top of what we've seen in terms of the kills in the scuffle so far. But even then still, Ruda on that jet being a little bit different what we saw out of the Rays so far. Able to go ahead and, as I mentioned earlier, Suge in that matchup, Suge is winning that more times than not between those two when it came around to Lotus. But already, when you look at a different agent pool and when you look at a different duelist selection, well, we're seeing different elements being birthed from that. And even then, Ruda looking a lot more confident, especially with these first 2 rounds under their wing, able to take those fights relatively much quicker and much more effectively.
Go will be slowly stalling out on their approach in for the retake on A site. Spike is down effectively, and now Oklahoma can decide in which they want to engage. Recon bolt up over the top. Ruda would have to clear that. And Koa does not know they're up on box. There's no information for a crossfire, and everyone now for Oklahoma have to come in from the attacking side main. And I don't really know if this is the right idea. They'll fall back. They do not want to retake a 2v3, but with that kill, honestly, Koa was tempted. You saw them hesitate. They started walking forward there for a second. But it's probably the wise idea with time on the line here to wait out here just on the edge of attacker spawn and hold on to these rifles. It was already not a great buy for them. Like I mentioned, they only got 1 kill in the first 2 rounds. So they just don't want to take too many risks. Try to create opportunities for round 4 and maybe more for round 5, since these players will have a little bit of extra eco. Not much in terms of credits, but maybe a little bit when they head around to that end.
Yeah, but even then with the streak underway, 3 rounds, this is where it caps out, and even then you can still see that Charlotte have a lot left in the tank in terms of what they've done, because, keep in mind, they had the 3 Vandals carrying over from round number 2 to round number 3, and now round number 4, and that's just the biggest thing. While you were saving, not even opting in for the Sheriffs or anything, you had Ghosts for the other 2 players who weren't opting in for those Vandals during round number 2. That's so much money. Just kind of go ahead and invest it going forwards that, you're surprised, honestly, that Valorant doesn't incentivize a percentage of an actual investment rather than just actually more credits. So, it is just so darn effective the way that we are seeing Charlotte hold this thing down, especially just pushing the agenda early on, getting these kills. We're looking for these initial gunfights, but, in that 1v1, it's Men who's already gotten a couple taps off. Fuzzy on the other side, able to go ahead and find one of their own. It is just clean killing from these duelists on the side of Charlotte that they know, especially this being map number 3, they know who the momentum is falling towards. They know who's really starting to feel it and who's getting shut down. And they say, whoever's shooting, go ahead, lock in the duelists and just go ahead and clean this thing up.
We're at a close angle here. Perfect flash. And Pi has no chance in that fight. No dog to take a bite in. Pop flash now as Suja gets swung by C's, and C's, good night, deals with that player with nary a problem. It's 4-0 for Charlotte, as you'd expect. They didn't bring much to the table, bar the 2 rifles from previous. But Clever and Koa will also be very short stripped for cash. They bought full credits for util in the prior round, meaning that save, honestly, Dallas, hurt them more than it assisted them, because they still only got 1 kill in round 4. They're actually worse off from that save than they would have been having the full team wait things out. And sometimes that's just the name of the game. Sometimes things break down the wrong direction. But no matter the case, Oklahoma will take a timeout very early on, just 4 rounds in, heading into the 5th. And we like to say use them or lose them, but only 4 rounds to kind of see how Charlotte play. That means they've seen 2 rushes to B and 2 plants with a slow lap in round 3 to A and then a quick push to A. I don't know if that's enough. You didn't really see a full utility B site take. There's not a lot of information to glean on that B site. Even though A is so easy, this could have been maybe 1 or 2 rounds too early. But hopefully they can, nip in the bud a lot of the problems that have arisen throughout these and maybe talk about how they're going to get these top 2 players for Oklahoma some weapons that work.
Well, you talk about seeing the 2B rush. You talk about seeing the presence on the A side. But, I mean, if anything, a big problem that's going to go ahead and on us because, I mean, it's relatively early. Bring up that scoreboard once more. You can see that 3 of the players on the side of Oklahoma have been seeing every other teammate's perspective because they've been dead. They haven't been able to shoot back. They haven't been able to play the game really at all. And when you see Charlotte on this initial starting side for the attacking, that's another big thing. Kind of when it comes around to that map selection, you're seeing that momentum being built so early on that we're even Sap at 5-1, being a Sentinel for goodness sake, is still able to go ahead and close out more kills. It's feeling a lot more confident. Where we're going to see Oklahoma being in the middle of a mental hell where they really just have to rebound and make sure to get into this thing. And Min doesn't have a chance in this one. Make that a 5th round now where you just can't play. You're looking at something else. But Suge finally has a chance to at least get something, has a taste of blood, and that should be enough to open their eyes.
3 versus 4 now. Sight looking to be B, but you still have one lagging behind inside A main. Rotate will be unlikely, though, but the double tap did keep Fuzzy alive for nary a moment. Pi wants to swing for more. Sees one. That was Pichu, but down they go. The 2-on-2 with a refrag back from Clever. Clever has an angle towards Snowman. Doesn't know really where C's is going to go with this. We'll play this inside corner and watch this lane as they take the full rotate through Orange and now off towards the A site. You don't have a great line of sight under Hut for this. But Sep, not having Spike, says, I want to watch and wait, why don't I? I'll get any players heading this direction to contend, and Koa needed to grab a rifle from a teammate's dead body. Doesn't feel like there was the chance to really do so. Close in the corner there, the first bait gun was blocking it, but they get the shot. Rifle now dropped, and it's a C's v Koa, 1v1. And Toa actually has a weapon now to work with. They'll drop to the lower side of bottom mid. Up from heaven. Shock dart over just to clear out screens, but it only blocks and obfuscates your view as C's is on the other end. Robot hiding behind the shock dart. And Oklahoma have found limited success, if any, and the scoreline proves that being 0-5.
Yeah, no drone, no recon dart, nothing really to work with there on the end of Koa to really kind of go for the angle into A side. I mean, that's one of the biggest kind of problems that you have with that side of the map is how many angles you have to watch, and not even only from that entryway where obviously you're pushing initially from the attacking side, but everything following that of whether or not you're going to see a player up top. And even then, as you can see from that angle right there's so many alternatives you can find, and who else in C's to kind of exercise and utilize each one of them already kind of being 5-0 to start this thing off. So I mean, outstanding start from Charlotte here. And even then still, if we do see this going the distance, see this coming back, it's going to be Oklahoma coming, as I mentioned earlier, back from the depths because things have been relatively slow of a start for them. It's still 5-0. One more round, you have a guaranteed even half from Charlotte. One more after that, they have a guaranteed lead no matter what. So it's just Oklahoma just clawing their way back into this thing. But Fuzzy has something to say about it to kick things off. Viper's pit employed towards A. You're going to have to see that rotation eventually, and Steph's going to be waiting for it.
The whole reason they used the kill contract was trying to strip away the Viper, which may be the whole idea behind the ISO for Charlotte. But they wisened up to the employment. This is something that I think Charlotte are probably used to seeing. Or sorry, that I think Oklahoma are probably used to seeing. If they go ISO and Icebox, where's the value for that? So they have a player stand in front for the kill contract. They eat it. And that means you can't push off. You can't try to engage afterwards. Oklahoma will have the player advantage, maybe looking for their first round win, and it's only Sep now remaining. One player up on yellow, there it is, dealt with. And Suge will be the one get it for 3. They had a very slow start, let's be honest. That one kill they got just last round on the approach in towards B, they missed a lot of shots. It felt like they weren't expecting them to be walking there, and then the attempt afterwards was just completely minuscule for actual effort. Maybe this is the moment where Suge can step up to the plate because they are the best fragger right now statistically in playoffs. Now, there are still 2 games that have to be played, but I would find it very difficult to believe that a player could drop 33 kills on one map and then 31 kills on the other map and be like, try to beat me, and I'm also going to have a third map of stats to pad into it even further.
I mean, my just idea was more so whether or not he wakes up, kind of like that scene from Finding Nemo, when Bruce smells the blood. It's like this guy's got to wake up eventually. We got to see those people's dialect. Like this man has to wake up at some point in time. And I mean, well, I'm expecting him to. I believe he will. And not only just him, but the rest of Oklahoma as well. We saw men manage to get 2 during that last round. So everybody's now kind of pitching in equally. Koa now feeling a little bit more alive with that initial kill, getting the Hunter's Fury online, now using that as a kind of an avenue to get Suge to push out. And this guy is just running circles around the likes of Charlotte here on top of this A site, where they managed to once again be the only team still to run with these flawlesses and get them. Not consistently by any means, because that's not to be expected, but 3, 4 here for the entire series is good looking.
You only need 2. Worst case scenario if you're Oklahoma in this first half on defense, right? It's typically a very attacker dominated map. Icebox was always the map we saw 9-3's curses come online. But you only need 2 because you lost the pistol in the first half, giving you some space to maybe win the pistol in the second and have some room. If you don't win it, it would be match and series point for Charlotte, but there's still obviously a perfect half that can come afterwards. And for attack, that's a much easier ask than it seems like it isn't. But Oklahoma putting a stamp in things, getting 2 in a row for Charlotte, that's a wise choice to make a call out. Time things out, talk things through. Where were they finding value? Obviously, ISO kill contract, the one before, kind of threw things out into a gambit. The toxic screen we thought was going to be super good for us, and the approach off towards A site fell apart. The Hunter's Fury wasn't anything crazy for Oklahoma's defense, but Suge, obviously from above, their tacit responsibility of constantly rotating between inside tube and up on box, the mobility that provides, the angle down below when they took down the ISO for Charlotte of Sep. So many things piecing together for little tidbits that give Oklahoma just a little bit of an edge that they need. Charlotte have to try to deny that. And it doesn't help when you have Suge, who can play the A site very well, and you've got Clever, who can play nearly anywhere very well, whether that be top mid or rotated towards B, where they typically would like to put those walls. The value is just so substantial, because even if they don't go to Clever's side, Clever can just throw up the quick little use of the toxic screen, and look at how well that played against Charlotte the round prior.
It just comes down to whether or not they actually want to keep on pushing this A side and whether or not they have the control. And with Seth opening things up once more, it is crazy how this guy has the balls to push up as a sentinel of all things and just chow these duelists over and over again. It's insanity. I mean, you have no util to back yourself up here. You're just kind of really just saying, all right, here we go. Why not? Send it down. And yeah, manage actually getting the job done. Here it is. Ruda also following up as well. Already knocking down 2 of the 5 players here on the side of Oklahoma. But what's next? What follows up? Well, Clever getting knocked down as well. So lockdown's employed. Clearly going to be Seps, considering how many kills he's found inside this game so far, and it should be a free plant inside the Viper's pit. This is a full investment coming through, and while Charlotte only has a 1-player advantage, it feels like they got way more presence than usual, just purely be off of the util.
Ruda will peek around the edge here. The Viper's toxic screen. Oklahoma 1 up and 2. Suge, though, maybe should have had a chance. And a pre-fire from Pi actually did get a lot of damage through. And now you're being flanked from both ends. And, well, sometimes you eat a hot dog from only one side. Sometimes you get a bite the other end. And that's not a good spot to be in. You're going to get some indigestion if you're Oklahoma. Not the space to be in. Not the score line you want to be in either. Charlotte have guaranteed an even half at bare minimum. And you'd likely see a lot more past that point, as the eco was started to stabilize for Oklahoma for the most part with those wins and the loser's bonus through the first 5. They can get an operator in Suge's hand. And this is a weapon that should pair very well for the A site hold. This Jet has been within. Combo that with the toxic screen. They really only have to look at Belt, and they just need 1 player to assist them for the lower line of sight. And that tacit responsibility should be off towards either the KJ or the Sova for the side. This requires Suge to not get swung. The reticle here will be blocking the upper side of Belt. And they're watching that as Suge just takes the drop. And it's an upper 2-player, and the flick just isn't there. Ruda rips apart their doppelganger. Almost gets Koa as well, but the flick up in time. It's a Preston vulnerable there with the util from ISO. And somehow, someway, Oklahoma are down to a single 2. Nope, let's just make it 1. Why don't you? Charlotte knocking on the door of 7.
Yeah, just looking really for anything here. I mean, men obviously going to be playing for X. It's looking to just go ahead and kind of close off whatever players are straggling about. But, I mean, I wouldn't blame Charlotte with the amount of players alive to kind of go ahead and start hunting if you can. But the issue is when Pichu and Fuzzy get shut down like that, you kind of got to run for the hills. Play for that post plant. Just get that denial. And even then, still, there's not enough utility to really get the job done. So you're just looking for repositioning yourself over and over and over again, creating this big, massive maze for men to have to go through, and even better yet, just trying to go ahead and push up. But it gets to that point where time is ticking. You can't push away from the spike too far. You got to get in these fights eventually. And, well, the turret back online, yeah. You've done your job. You will live to this so long as you just clear out far enough. And, well, congratulations. A beautiful attempt for men, just not going to be close enough for the cigar.
Take a look at the scoreboard here in a second. We pull this up. Min has been a very good player overall, I would argue, for Oklahoma. Obviously, they weren't doing super great, but utility-wise was performing very well on our last map of Lotus. Map 1 was a little bit better for them overall, statistically. But they were having a really tough first 6 rounds here on the map of Icebox. And I feel like when you rock Double Duelist and you rock the Reyna, there's a lot of value for the Reyna. And I made the comment in between during the break toss. I said, what are we expecting to see? Is Ruda going to play Reyna? That was my idea for Charlotte, since we had noticed that they were still on the lineup and they brought Sep in. They're going to play the ISO. They're going to play a Reyna. Oklahoma go for the Reyna instead. I didn't think it would be Min. And they're just not finding the value in it. Look again. This is ridiculous. Min is not able to collect these shots right now. And they have utility. Where's the Leer? Send it above your head, for goodness sake. It's a battle of attrition, and you're just feeding the beasts of Charlotte. You cannot survive a feast of just feeding piece after piece of yourself over and over again into the second half. Because you got to have confidence. You have to be mentally aware. You have to be mentally there. And with scorelines going really bad, it can only get worse. As C's deals with Pie up inside of Kitchen, and it's only Koa remaining. You'd have to pull off a crazy 1v3. You're being hunted by a pretty big play from C's. Goes for a pop flash, and the railing eats basically every shot that was required of it.
It's a matter of even then, I mean, you talk about the offensive side, you talk about how it's just very much weighed towards the end of Charlotte, but it's not even just a matter of the executions of being in these post plants. I mean, we see the post plants working out for their favor as well. So they know how to hold the angles. It's just a matter of these gunfights every single time. You're looking at Charlotte trying to go ahead and just, you know, understandably so, find these initial picks, but even then still the order of operations isn't even lined up correctly. We're seeing Sep just step right into the frame as a singular man, want to take these fights against duelists, pushing up and making the plays as if they are on the attack, and they are the duelists somehow as well. Oklahoma's trying to meet these fights a lot, just early on, trying to shut anything down as early as they can with that double duelist on their end as well, but they're just not able to do it. And I think that's going to be a replication to some degree also on the defensive end here for Charlotte, where you're going to be seeing probably Sep expectedly supposed to be sitting back, but this guy's going to be pushing in, looking to find kills, looking to bring the fight to him early and finding maybe 2-3 off the back of it. But there's still a lot of time to get there. No matter what, Oklahoma can't find anything past 4, and maybe even then, with Suge being on site, having the blade storm, we've seen this guy dance around A before, and, well, with the numbers already working in their advantage, you got to see him do it once more.
Now you've got the Beast of Suge over on A side, and the last 2 remaining for Charlotte. Don't really want to have to deal with that. It was the last straw that broke the camel's back, so they'll rotate over towards B. One player close. Can Min get this frag? Okay, takes a second, but they collect it wisely. Pichu with a flick. What a monstrous kill. And it's now a 2-on-1. Pichu down to 69 HP. Nice. But has to step just below the inside interior of Tube, wary of being pincered like the hot dog I mentioned earlier. But the Snowman player of Suge doesn't really want to step forward this far just yet. And they're trying to make a choice. There it is, finally, for Suge. And they secure themselves a third and get Oklahoma a third round on top. It's a game of 3s, it feels like, the Oklahoma roster, as we're now in the final round of this first half. And if you're an Oklahoma fan, Dallas and I have been mentioning it a while, and we're even mentioning it in the comms in the Discord through our text chat. This is very normal for Icebox. Getting 3 is really good. And if Oklahoma can somehow pull off a 4th, you better start sweating if you're a Charlotte fan.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. Like I said, I'm just seeing a momentum that we haven't really seen. I mean, obviously, this is the biggest discrepancy we've seen between these two teams just in general. I mean, obviously, at the start, being the 4-0, that's been the biggest round difference we've seen through the entirety of this series. They drove it on into 5 as well, everything beyond that. But you just had to see some momentum pick up. You had to see somebody start getting a kill. And then finally, as Rudy gets shut down, we see men able to go ahead and step into the fray and kind of have some efforts once more. But guess what? You get an initiator just as good as your duelist. We talk about C's. We've been singing his praises his entire series so far. And, well, with him being at the lead of the charge now and having an ISO and Fuzzy to back him up as well, I mean, there is more than enough resources here from these guys to really get the job done. And I think more so they can definitely do it. But with the lockdown being employed here, you're going to be funneling these players off-site. You're going to be hoping that they push themselves all the way back to spawn. But guess what? Pichu's here trying to create something, but finds relatively nothing.
Sees lagging back, trying to play just in the inside edge of Tube, or sorry, off of Yellow. Has 2 players there. Shock Dart would have been pretty big there for Koa, but has a good swing by Suge there, back in Snowman for a shot for the operator. Sep does get one, and they fall as Pi closes house. I said if Oklahoma get 4, you better start sweating if you're Charlotte, because the offense, that is the hardest. The pill to swallow as a defending team, just how good offensive teams are. Even if you're not a great offensive team, Icebox just is a map where offense is king. But the pistol greatly helped Charlotte's stance in that. 2 in a row to get. They butchered a third if you're Oklahoma because they didn't stance correctly and just kind of got misread into it. That gave them obviously a good 3, which turned to 4. The Ecos save in round 3 turned into a bigger problem for round 5, right? So Charlotte get a huge lead early, but look at how these last 6 turned into. Look at how it actually started. Last 7 turned to. It actually started to turn for Oklahoma, and they were winning more often than they lost. Charlotte have to really darn good on defense, and Oklahoma need this pistol, and if they do, that is a lights out statement to make the remainder of this half.
It's something. A4 still present here for the half, able to go ahead and look for something, and honestly, Charlotte have found a lot. But it depends on whether or not they can actually find themselves a nice little start to this half. Because, I mean, we saw the 5-0 clearance, and if they manage to get themselves 5-0 once more, well, guess what? That's lights out. That's the entire series over with. But as it stands right now, they're on a good road to at least getting themselves a first, as they've already knocked out the first 2 players. And as I talked about it earlier, it's going to be Sep probably more times than not pushing up. But Pichu being present here as well. These 2 guys have been disgusting. And, well, they do it once more. Both getting a 2K, biting more than enough time to Fuzzy to get on site and say, hey, I want a piece of this pie as well, and is able to go ahead and eat up what's left. So 9 rounds here for Charlotte, keeping things rolling. You know what they're going to do for this next one. Let's see the purchases. Already 1 Phantom. Okay, now going to it back to a Bulldog. I can respect that a little bit more. But with Ruda and the Outlaw in hand, 2 Outlaws better yet. Oof. And another Phantom for Sep. I mean, this guy has been frying during the entirety of this map. I cannot blame him for saying if I'm going to be a one-man army with the assistance of a Viper Wall, that's the best way you can really do it.
They're going to put this top of tube and then 1 off on site for A? What a weird combo for the placements of the Outlaw. No, they'll trade out the Outlaw apparently for Fuzzy. Played intel game initially for mid with that Ghost. They die. What is it, 200, 300 credits to their name? It's not a huge deal. Like, it's whatever. And you even have C's down below to work with even more. Fuzzy even gets a kill there with that Ghost. I said you needed, if you're Oklahoma, at least 2 in the first half to make sure you didn't lose instantly when the pistol goes the wrong way, which it had a likely chance to with how good the first one was for Charlotte. And then it's now turning into the exact same thing. Flawless. And the pistols have been so darn good for Charlotte. If they're going flawless, and it's been that way in the second round of each half, maybe that has something to say more about Oklahoma. Now, Oklahoma, please do everyone a favor here and don't save a single rifle at the end of this next round like you did the first time, because then that's going to turn into 5 and it's going to be an end game for Charlotte.
Well, I mean, looking at double digits, it's already looking similarly close to that. But even then, everything beyond it, I mean, you see the Vandal being bought up. You understand that the Guardian's now coming into play as well. He's just going to be going close quarters with that Bulldog in hand anyways, working with Sep and that Phantom. It's just a lot of automatic fire in the close quarter environments, and then more so for the distance. That's where you're looking for more of those semi-autos. But now with a bit of a swap up, it's kind of a curveball that, well, even I wasn't really expecting. Already going ahead, trying to get something to work with here, but good shot to kick things off. I mean, that was a beautiful shot, considering that you're looking at a Lear and you still managed to hit a player like that. That's scary, but 10 health still keeps the player alive, still keeps a recon dart in the pocket, and still better yet, keeps another shot to the head. There is both duelists holding down this A site, making things impossible, seemingly, to break through here for Oklahoma.
Oh, and Pichu has a Bulldog to deal with Pi. Down goes Pi, and down goes the chances of Oklahoma. These pistols and the recoveries afterwards, man, Oklahoma, you can't be a second half as a second half team. Even when you're on the offense, you had to get more out of round 2. Round 14, if you want to be super specific here. You had to get more out of it. You had to drop the weapons from Charlotte's hands. You didn't. They had the Outlaws. They had the weapons, and look what it's done to you. They've ripped you asunder. Go is alone, and they're saving a rifle. Did we not learn anything, Oklahoma? You save this, your team likely loses the next one, gets Charlotte at 12 for match and series points, and then guess what, Koa? You don't have a gun in the final round. Try to get an exit frag. Get a spike plant. Move into space. You got 13 seconds to get into control here. Wraparound not being made really by Charlotte's defense in through mid. They didn't really want to contest too far into attacker spawn. They are moving now through yellow. Koa will have no chance for a fight, and Oklahoma won't have to worry about them saving that weapon because Koa will eventually fall. But this is now 11 for Charlotte. And with a round like this, where it's an eco for Oklahoma, they'll be at match and series points. And after such a close set of games on map 1 and map 2, and OT and map 2, multiple rounds of it, Oklahoma don't look like they have a great dog in this fight. The pistol rounds have thrown the eco, the mental, I feel like, for this Oklahoma offense.
Man, I don't know really what to say about it, quite frankly. I mean, it just leaves you a little, just breathless, obviously, in some degree, but it leaves you kind of just scrapping together words with how this performance of Oklahoma has been on this map. Because, well, obviously, it's just recently reintroduced, hasn't been around for a while, but it shouldn't change the muscle memory of having this map for years prior. Not too much of an actual composition change. All these agents available on the side of Oklahoma have been around. Charlotte bringing the ISO and Fuzzy has been a bit of its own little thing. But Pichu and Viper and being on a 4K, well, there's not really much you can do about that. Obviously, an eco round, not the craziest thing in the world, but yeah, it's just going to be insane here.
Now, for Oklahoma, let's inject a little bit of copium for you. You lose this here in this final round as we're at match and series points. You still will have 32 points. You place 9th through 12th, you get 16. That ties the 16 you had for the first split and fall. You're at 32. But let's keep in mind as well, there are teams like GMU who are already at 32. Converse, who despite not even making this far, have 24. Clemson have 24. Auburn's at 16. They didn't make it nearly far enough to make a stance anyways. UCF's gone. There is still a pretty good shot that Oklahoma get through, but every team in front of you that moves on, that even if they weren't here the first split, are going to get 24. Which means you got to pray that every team that wasn't here in the first split gets knocked out in this next round. And the teams you're looking at are not teams that are likely to get knocked out in that split.
Right.
It's a tough battle, and it's already worse in this round. 2 left for Oklahoma. Suge gets a consolation kill here as they immediately get refragged by C's. And Pi goes down for the 13-4 final tally. Charlotte lock in, focus up, and just devour everyone on the side of Oklahoma for the final map. That is not the way you'd expect that best of 3 to end, but Oklahoma, you got 32 points heading in. Maybe it's enough to squeak through, especially if a couple teams can't make it to the land.
Yeah, I will say it's another big caveat, obviously. I mean, it really comes down to whether or not teams are here available for the land. But I mean, obviously with the difference when it comes around to actually having to pay for the entry and whatnot now, it's more so the schools that are willing to pay for those kinds of things, those entry fees, especially travel fees stacked on top of it. So it's all kind of an expectation, especially depending on the caliber of the program that you're looking at. And I mean, clearly Oklahoma making it out last year, good for them. And they're probably going to be first in line when it comes around to anybody else down that ladder. Because, I mean, when you look at everybody else, we can look at Cumberland, we can look at JMU, when you look at UGA, I mean, whether it be proximity or whether it be financial support from the university, I mean, every single person left really kind of has that running for them in one way or another. So, I mean, it's going to be a long shot, but it is possible nonetheless. But, I mean, it comes down to that last map, and if you just kind of locked in and didn't let that happen, there was clear chance of you not even having to have those concerns.
With this win, technically, you now have the same amount of points, Charlotte, as UGA Black did coming into the season, 40. Now, they've continued on. They're also top 8, so they're now technically at like 50. They're at 64 now for points. Yeah. But that was a team that was going to pretty much be guaranteed in anyways. They just had to participate for this next semester to get enough points to qualify. GMU, I think they've also been able to solidify with 32 and then moving on to that game. It would be hard pressed to see it go the other way. The one that was kind of shocking to me as we broke it down a little bit, me and Bepik did on the State of the SEL on Tuesday, Dallas, was that technically Cumberland may actually have to make it to the finals to make it to LAN, because they did not play at all in the previous semester, in the prior semester,
right?
The previous split, because they have nothing. And a lot of the teams that are stacked in and going have still continued to stack in and going. You would have to get to second place for 40 to beat out now Oklahoma. So you'd have to get into the finals in the first place. Winning it would guarantee you 48 points. Yeah, I don't think that would be pretty hard to do. But you have to get there because third and fourth is only 32, and that's just tying with Oklahoma at that stance for 16 and 16. And then it becomes a head-to-head thing, which I don't even know if we're going to go off head-to-head for land seeding, or we're going to force them to face each other. And if we force them to face each other, Oklahoma, it's Cumberland Phoenix. But that's also relying on Cumberland Phoenix not making it somehow into second place. Somehow, maybe there's a miracle that happens. They would have to face who's the ones that go into it. They would have to
Texas
face
State, and George
GMU
Mason is on
State.
that side of the bracket. And GMU, I think they have a pretty fair shot at beating. Good. Texas State is going to be kind of that big kicker whenever it really comes down to it. Like if that happens and we're not streaming that one on Thursday, then I'm not showing up. Just plain and simple. I mean, it is just how that goes. Because that bottom side of the bracket is really just a little bit more kind of set in stone. When you look at James Madison University now going up against Charlotte Esports next week, Cumberland Destiny and Niner Esports main team going up against UGA Black. I mean, they're season one, or not season one, but semester champs or fall champs, better yet. So, I mean, seeing what's kind of going on there, I mean, those two seem a little bit more one-sided. I think genuinely Cumberland Destiny have somewhat of a shot against UGA Black. It depends on how serious they really want to take this bracket. But, I mean, when it comes around to Phoenix and Red, that should be set in stone. It's more so just Texas State that I think is really going to be that wrench in the plans of Cumberland if they really do want to be going.
Cumberland Destiny is really good. Don't get me wrong. They are very good. But when you have a program that can bring in talent from overseas and stacks that roster for their main team to do so and creates a historically good collegiate team in any program, but the program, right, to look at right now for the South,
right?
You can look at them and be like, great. But their old main team is now Cumberland Destiny, right? And they have a lot of history together. Yeah. I think Cumberland Destiny against Niner Esports main team, if they somehow lose to Niner Esports main team, which there's a chance, I think Niner Esports main team is a really good team. They're just slightly edged out by Charlotte. Cumberland Destiny still have the better chance against UGA Black. You're right. But JMU versus Charlotte, if it was JMU in Oklahoma, there's too many weaknesses, I think, in this series that Oklahoma showed that Chicken Joe would just be like, yeah, okay, we're not going to have a problem here. I'm monitoring, I'm marking every note possible. But Charlotte, there are obvious weaknesses and they can exploit them, but Charlotte's also a team that constantly evolves and grows. I don't think they're a team that's going to lay back on their haunches and let that kind of go the other way. Should be a good game, but I do think JMU will likely take it. We'll have to see come next week. I'm going to try once again to try to get every game on broadcast in some capacity, whether that be recorded for a VOD review later on or a rebroadcast of some sort. But yeah, Texas State and GMU, that actually is I don't agree with you at all that should be Texas State, because JMU barely comes out ahead against Texas State, and GMU is nearly as good as JMU. They were only eked out of tier 1 because they had to face, I think it was Cumberland in play-ins, which knocked them out. In fact, I'm going to go back to it because now I'm going to be irked about it. Tier assignment. Matches, standings, find GMU. Where the heck is GMU?
What's okay, you're looking at the assignments, right? Yes.
GMU. Okay. They were way down here but yep, head-to-head. So yeah, they had to face Cumberland Phoenix and Knights Rising. When you already lost to Cumberland Phoenix, I think they FF'd to Knights Rising, if I'm being honest here. If you lose to Cumberland Phoenix, that's just going to happen. You got bad luck facing them in tier assignments. Right. We're expanding that next semester. It's going to be much less of a precedent point. They're a really darn good team. I think that game could go anywhere because I think GMU is up there with JMU, and JMU has beaten historically and proven to be able to beat Texas State. So GMU, I think, is a complete stand-in for LAN. I'm really looking forward to seeing them come down because I didn't get to see them previously. So really, really, really looking forward to this. But this was a great series. Instant SEO Classic for the first 2 maps. And who else but Oklahoma to bring an Instant SEO Classic right from the LAN? Our first Val LAN for the SEL, for the full grand final, all 5, and the just absolute battle that was. You'll love to see Oklahoma. But that last map obviously leaves a little bit of a sour taste.
Yeah, and it's Oklahoma also. I mean, they're at the point where, I mean, they make games look good as long as they draw out. But, I mean, they always just kind of falter short a little bit. And even then, going back to how they made grand finals, they didn't end up winning it. That's just still kind of like a testament to what they need to do. They're always so close, but they just fail to be, I guess, old enough to purchase a cigar because they just can't get access to them anytime it feels like. They're always able to look sustainable. They're always looking good. They always look to have some shreds of light here and there. But, I mean, as I said, I mean, more so Charlotte, it comes down to how much. There's 2 factors for Charlotte specifically. As I said earlier, they usually play up to the level of their opponent rather than setting their own golden standard. They always kind of like to play to what their opponent's strengths are and look kind of good and kind of keep things close and relative, but they don't actually make that big of a difference until their raw skill taps in. And when they say, okay, this is where it kind of happens, and you have to have gleaming problems for teams actually for Charlotte to just kind of go ahead and punch down at you. So I think when it comes around to this next matchup, as I mentioned with James Madison, it's sometimes, there are some teams that are too high to really go ahead and actually really play up to their level, especially when you kind of get in this area where they have that advantage. They've been watching you all week. They know what your Ascent looks like. They know what your Lotus looks like. And those are the big two that I feel like every team are going to let slip through. And there's no way they're going to let Icebox go unchecked at this point. I mean, that had to be one of your map picks. It had to be something that you were obviously leaving on the docket, and now that's going to be completely eliminated from your arsenal. So, I mean, there's a lot of potential in that matchup. There's a lot of just overall variables that could really kind of take it in. But in terms of the raw talent, if you're facing and struggling like this on Lotus and Ascent against Oklahoma, JMU's not going to let that one happen.
So far through playoffs, Suge is still the number one kill factor for success and the number one player in our playoff section for stats. Now, obviously, the top four haven't played in playoffs, right? And we don't have all the games. But when you drop 75 kills, despite the overall team bad performance in the final map and the way that scoreline goes, that's really, really impressive. And I'd like to see them play on land, right? Because we know Oklahoma gets better at land. So maybe they make it, maybe we don't. That's just a point to kind of hold on to for them. But for another key point before we jump on out of here, GMU did face all three in that play-ins, and they only lost to Cumberland 13-7. Now, keep in mind, Ascent is the map where good teams go to die, and JMU dropped two rounds. They got 2 rounds on the entirety of that map on Ascent. And if GMU is getting more than that on any other map, stipulations, guesses, it's all out there. But I do think GMU absolutely has a shot, and they're pretty much guaranteed for Lynn at this point, having 50 points right now sitting in their back pocket. So they're going to be a team to very much so keep an eye out. But with that being said, congratulations to every team that has made it their way through. Congratulations to every team that didn't make their way through. You made it super far here on the SCL. We're super happy to have you, and we can't wait to see more of you going into the next split. The improvements you make, the roster changes, the adjustments you make, how the map pool will pan out around the time. No matter what it is in front of us, we can work through it all together because it's the SEL, baby. We're in one giant Southeast family down here. We'll see you guys next week in more Valorant action. We have a little bit more over the weekend, so keep your eye in the Discord.